Chapter 11:14. He even dares to detain Huawu? Is that brat Tang Qinshi tired of living? Song Qingshu suddenly snorted coldly. His originally refined and gentle demeanor disappeared, as if he had become a different person. An oppressive aura suddenly surged from his body, and a furious and violent aura soared into the sky. Ah, Qingshu, what's wrong? Do you know Huawu? Hongzhu was greatly startled. Looking at the cold expression on Song Qingshu's face, he felt as if there was a ferocious beast standing in front of him. Song Qingshu did not answer. Instead he coldly said, Hongzhu, let's go to the Tang family now. I want to see how many lives that lackey Tang Qinshi has. How much courage does he have to give him such power? This. Hongzhu was somewhat surprised when he saw Song Qingshu's cold eyes, but he still subconsciously followed behind him. Although he did not know why Song Qingshu was so angry, Hongzhu did not dare to ask. He could only carry his heart full of doubts as he sped in the direction of the Tang family. Under the spur of the horse, the two of them smoothly arrived at the Tang family's residence in no time. There were still many guards patrolling the perimeter of the Tang family's residence, vigilantly observing their surroundings. However, what surprised Hongzhu was that Song Qingshu seemed to have been here several times. He led Hongzhu inside with ease, perfectly avoiding all the patrolling guards in the vicinity, and directly walked towards a certain courtyard. When they arrived at the courtyard, Hongzhu carefully looked around and discovered that there were no guards patrolling the place. The entire courtyard was frighteningly quiet, with only the faint sound of voices coming from the largest room in front. Hongzhu was just about to ask Song Qingshu what they should do next, but when he turned his head, he saw that Song Qingshu had not said a word and was instead rushing towards that room. Bang! Song Qingshu fiercely kicked the door open and swaggered into the room without saying a word. Hongzhu was once again shocked by Song Qingshu's actions. Isn't this a little too arrogant? It must be known that the Tang family was one of the three great families of the internal martial arts circle. Yet he had rashly rushed in like this. Wasn't this just seeking his own death? Did Song Qingshu take the wrong medicine? But now that it had already happened, Hongzhu could not turn back time. She had to save Song Qingshu first, so she only hesitated for a moment before putting away her timid attitude. She took a deep breath and braced herself to follow Song Qingshu into the room. Who are you? How dare you barge into young Master Ling's room? Do you want to die? A familiar voice called out. Hongzhu raised his head and saw that it was Tang Qinshi, who had assumed a defensive stance and was glaring at him. Tang Qianling, who was sitting next to him, was sitting leisurely with his legs crossed, but at this time he was so shocked by the loud sound of the door breaking that he almost fell off his chair. Song Qingshu? Tang Qianling stabilized his body with great difficulty. He was about to raise his head and scold Song Qingshu when he saw that the person who had come was the second young master of the Song family, Song Qingshu. Cold sweat immediately broke out on his back and he almost fell off his chair again. Fortunately, Tang Qinshi caught him in time. Tang Qianling straightened his body with a guilty conscience and was just about to ask Song Qingshu why he had come here, when Tang Qinshi's sharp eyes noticed Hongzhu, who was following behind Song Qingshu. He immediately shouted, Hongzhu, why are you here again? Don't think that we will be afraid just because you brought someone to help us. This is the Tang. Watch. Before he could finish speaking, Tang Qinshi's entire body was sent flying. He let out an anguished howl in the air before crashing heavily onto the ground. Blood bubbled incessantly from his mouth and nose, and his eyes were tightly shut as he lay motionless. It seemed that he had been knocked unconscious. Tang Qianling trembled in fear. He watched as Song Qingshu slowly wiped his hands. Just as he was thinking about how to speak, Song Qingshu's sharp gaze swept over him. Tang Qianling, you're quite capable, aren't you? You actually dared to have your lackeys detain Hongzhu's friend. Have you forgotten the painful beating you received when you were young? It seems that I have to remind you again. Song Qingshu said with a cold expression. Without waiting for Tang Qianling to react, Song Qingshu quickly appeared in front of him in a flash and swung his fist at his face. Bang! Tang Qianling sensed that something was wrong, but it was already too late for him to dodge. He hurriedly circulated his mental cultivation method to resist, but his face still took a solid hit. He could not help but cry out in pain as he was thrown backward along with his chair by the force of the punch. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. Not bad. Your reaction is quite fast. You know how to resist now. I would like to see how many attacks you, a mere great perfection martial king, can withstand. Song Qingshu said expressionlessly. Under Hongzhu's dumbstruck gaze, Song Qingshu mercilessly punched and kicked Tang Qianling's body like a sandbag, as if venting all the dissatisfaction and anger in his heart. Stop hitting me. Second young master Song. I know I was wrong. Ouch. Tang Qianling screamed miserably as he raised his hands to defend himself. However, no matter how hard he tried, Song Qingshu's punches and kicks would always accurately land on the areas that he could not defend against. Not long after, his body was covered in injuries and his face was covered in dirt. He looked incomparably miserable. Tang Qianling was on the verge of tears. He resisted in vain. Suddenly, a memory from his childhood surfaced in his mind. Back then, children liked to play together. However, whenever he bullied the disciples of the weaker sects, Song Qingshu would always stand up for them and beat him up, often leaving him with a bloody nose and a swollen face. Strangely, every time he was beaten up, he would complain to the Tang family's patriarch, his grandfather. Not only would his grandfather not stand up for him, he would also harshly reprimand him, telling him not to provoke Song Qingshu in the future. This made Tang Qianling even more depressed. Later on, Tang Qianling learned his lesson and tried not to provoke those who were on good terms with Song Qingshu. Although he did not know the reason why the Tang family's patriarch did not stand up for him, it was better than being beaten up and reprimanded. It was only after he grew up that Tang Qianling vaguely understood that although the Song family of the inner martial arts world was not large, they seemed to have unfathomable strength and an unknown background. Even the Awakening Gate did not dare to provoke them, let alone the Tang family. In the past, some ignorant families had dared to provoke them. However, in the end they did not have a good ending. They either fell apart or declined overnight. However, what was strange was that although the Song family was powerful, they did not expand. They quietly stayed together with the Hong family and a few other small families, forming a small circle of their own. They rarely interacted with other families. Chapter 11:15. Stop putting on an act. This young master is only using ordinary punches and kicks. Otherwise, you would have died a long time ago. Song Qingshu's anger had almost dissipated after being beaten for a while. He rolled his eyes and said angrily, Yes. Thank you for being merciful. Qianling will remember it. Tang Qianling covered his head and face and answered incoherently. He didn't even know what he was talking about. Seeing that Tang Qianling's clothes were dirty and torn, and there were several big bumps on his head, he looked very pitiful. Song Qingshu stopped punching and looked down at him, saying, I'll give you 5 minutes to quickly hand over all the people you've captured. I won't say it again. Who do you want me to hand over? Tang Qianling asked subconsciously with a sad face and a dizzy head. He was so dizzy from the beating earlier that he did not understand who Song Qingshu was talking about. Furthermore, he had yet to fully recover from the injuries from Xiao Chen's beating a few days ago. Now that he was beaten up by Song Qingshu, it made things worse. His entire head was in a mess. However, as soon as Tang Qianling opened his mouth to ask, he felt that something was wrong. He looked up and saw that Song Qingshu's face had darkened, and he had raised his fist again. Tang Qianling was shocked again. His brain was instantly stimulated, and he suddenly remembered that Tang Qianchi had indeed taken a few girls back. Don't hit me. Song Qingshu, I remember now. Those girls. I'll bring them over immediately. I guarantee that none of them will be missing. Please wait here for a while. Tang Qianling shouted and hurriedly stood up, dragging his injured body out. As he walked, Tang Qianling muttered in his heart, Damn it, let me go out and find helpers. Even if you're from the Song family, you'll still have to bear the consequences. Wait. Tang Qianling had only taken a few steps when Song Qingshu grabbed him. Did I say you can go? Song Qingshu grabbed the back of Tang Qianling's neck collar and said coldly, Let Tang Qianchi bring the hostage. You stay here as a hostage. If he doesn't bring her back by then, for every minute that passes, I'll break one of your arms or legs. Do you hear me? Yes, I heard it clearly. Tang Qianling felt a chill run down his spine. He shivered and could only dismiss the idea of asking for help. He turned around and saw that Tang Qianchi was still lying there. Second young master Song, Tang Qianchi. Tang Qianling rolled his eyes and wanted to say that since that guy was still unconscious, why not go by himself? What happened to him? Oh, I forgot to tell you that your 5 minutes have passed by half a minute. I hope your bones can be a little stronger. Don't break with a snap like a twig. Song Qingshu said casually without raising her head. Tang Qianling's throat tightened and he immediately staggered to Tang Qianchi's side. He kicked him hard and shouted, Don't sleep. Do you think it's comfortable to sleep on the floor? Why don't you hurry up and bring him here? Are you trying to get me killed? Ouch. Tang Qianqi had actually woken up a long time ago, but the moment he opened his eyes, he saw Tang Qianling being beaten half to death by Song Qingshu. Hong Zhu, who was watching from the side with great interest, was scared out of his wits. He thought to himself that he had provoked a tough guy. Wouldn't he be beaten up again if he got up? The point was that he was the one who ordered those girls to be captured, so he was the main culprit if they really wanted to investigate this matter. How could Tang Qianqi dare to get up rashly? He could only choose to continue lying there and pretend to faint. But now that his master had given the order, he naturally had to follow it as a henchman. Otherwise, if he offended Tang Qianling, he wouldn't have a good ending. Although the wounds on his body were still burning with pain, Tang Qianqi could only pretend that he had just woken up. He endured the pain and stood up, limped out of the room and hurriedly ran to the dungeon. Although Tang Qianling felt that every second in the room felt like a year, he was glad that in less than 3 minutes, Tang Qianqi had brought everyone back. The women looked to be in good condition, and there were no signs of injuries on their bodies. It was obvious that Tang Qianqi hadn't tortured them, but simply imprisoned them. Huawu, are you okay? Did Tang Qianling do anything to you? Don't be afraid. If you've suffered any grievances, tell me. Second brother definitely won't let them off. When Song Qingshu saw the 3 women enter, he recognized Song Huawu at a glance. His originally cold expression instantly became very warm. He stood up and asked about her well-being as he walked in her direction. When he reached Song Huawu, Song Qingshu stretched out his hand, wanting to take her pulse to check if she had suffered any internal injuries. Who are you? Don't come over. Song Huawu was stunned. She hurriedly took a few steps back and casually picked up a chair beside her to block in front of her. She stared at Song Qingshu vigilantly, feeling vaguely familiar in her heart. This person in front of me? Why does he look a little like me? Jin Beibei and Xiao Xiao immediately walked over and leaned close to Song Huawu. They looked at Song Qingshu strangely. Although they felt that Song Qingshu didn't seem to have any evil intentions, they still didn't let their guard down. Song Huawu did not expect Song Huawu to react like this. After a long time, he realized that Song Huawu didn't seem to know him. He immediately felt a little embarrassed. He stretched out one hand in the air, not knowing whether to advance or retreat, and froze. Song Huawu turned her head, glared at Tang Qianqi and reprimanded, Tang Qianqi, I knew you didn't have any good intentions. You said you would let us go, but in the end you brought us here. What tricks are you up to now? Hong Zhu, who was standing aside, was also stunned. He didn't understand why Song Huawu was so agitated, nor did he understand why Song Huawu acted as if she didn't know him. Judging from Song Qingshu's tone, they should be very familiar with each other. However, seeing the current situation, Hong Zhu still explained, Huawu, this is the second young master of the Song family. He heard that you were in trouble, so he came with me to rescue you. I'm sorry, Huawu, I was too impolite. Song Qingshu took the opportunity to withdraw his hand, touched his nose, stopped, and said apologetically, I forgot to introduce myself first. I'm Song Qingshu from the Song family of the Eternal Wulin, and I'm your second elder brother. But it's a long story. When we go back, I'll slowly tell you the ins and outs of the story. Hearing this, everyone present was a little dumbfounded. Tang Qianling and Tang Qianqi looked at each other in disbelief. How did Song Qingshu become Song Huawu's second elder brother? They had never heard that the Song family had such a beautiful daughter of the 3rd generation. However, Song Qingshu didn't seem to be pretending. What on earth was going on? Chapter 11:16. Tang Qianqi's face was even more colorful. His face turned green and white like a kaleidoscope. He kept wailing in his heart. I'm doomed. Song Huawu is Song Qingshu's younger sister. He had actually captured her. This time his little life could not be guaranteed. Jin Beibei and the other girls were also full of question marks. Hong Zhu was the most surprised. He had been to the Song family often, but he had never heard that Song Qingshu had a younger sister. But when he looked carefully, he found that the two of them did look a little similar. Song Huawu was the one who was most shocked. Her mouth was slightly open and she looked stunned. She did not even know when the chair had slipped from her hand. Her mind was in a mess. Song Billion had told her that she was an orphan since she was a child. How could she suddenly become a relative of a martial arts practitioner? And they seem to be very powerful people. This is not a good place to talk. Let's leave first. Song Qingshu completely ignored the strange looks of the people around her. She turned around and glanced at Tang Qianling as if she were looking at a dead man. She said sarcastically, "Master Ling, I'm going to take all of them away now. You won't have any objection, will you?" "No, of course not. We're really in a bad mood. We don't know each other." Tang Qianling still wanted to make friends with her, but when he saw Song Qingshu's glare he immediately changed the topic and said, "I didn't know the situation before, but now that I know that Miss Song is your younger sister, it's only natural that you take her away. Her friends will also go with her, right? Do you want me to ask someone to send you back to the Song family?" Tang Qianling's smile was extremely forced. He hoped that Song Qingshu would leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would not be able to stand it if she caused more trouble. Song Qingshu snorted disdainfully and ignored his proposal. She directly left Tang Qianling's residence with the girls. She walked through the Tang family's residence deftly as if there was no one around. She did not even run into a single guard and walked out of the back door smoothly. Tang Qianling heaved a huge sigh of relief after making sure that Song Qingshu, the malefic Song Qingshu, had gone far away. He couldn't help but feel furious when he recalled all the bad things that had happened to him recently. When he saw Tang Qianqi standing beside him, he raised his hand and gave him a slap, reprimanding him harshly. If it weren't for the fact that he was still injured, Tang Qianling would have beaten him up. Tang Qianqi was just rejoicing that Song Qingshu didn't have time to punish him before Tang Qianling slapped him so hard that he saw stars. However, in order to continue hugging Tang Qianling's thigh in the future, he could only swallow his anger and obediently listen to the scolding. He didn't even dare to wipe the spittle that splashed on his face. After Tang Qianling was done scolding him, Tang Qianqi obediently brought out medicinal pills to treat his injuries. He also found a few maids to serve him, not daring to complain. "Song Qingshu, you just said that Song Huawu is your sister. What's going on?" After Song Qingshu and the others safely returned to the Hong family, Hong Zhu saw that Song Qingshu had no intention of leaving and was still standing there. Song Huawu also seemed to be too embarrassed to say anything, so he took the initiative to ask, "What do you mean, what's going on?" "Huawu is indeed my sister." Song Qingshu had a matter-of-fact expression on his face, as if this matter should be known to everyone. "But I've never heard you mention it before. Could it be that you've taken a fancy to her, so you deliberately said that?" Hong Zhu pursed his lips and reminded him, "Don't blame me for not telling you, but Huawu has a boyfriend. You'd better give up on that idea." "What nonsense are you talking about? How could I have taken a fancy to my sister? I've never mentioned it before because it's a long story, and I can't explain it clearly in a short time, but—" Song Qingshu suddenly stopped, and the expression on his face became much more serious. He turned to look at Song Huawu and asked, "You have a boyfriend?" Song Huawu was startled. Although she was a little uncomfortable with Song Qingshu's serious expression, she still nodded. Song Qingshu immediately frowned and asked, "Who is your boyfriend? Which sect is he from? What's his name? How strong is he? Is he stronger than me, your second brother? Has he bullied you before? Has he mistreated you in any way?" Song Huawu looked at Song Qingshu with a surprised look on her face. He had asked a lot of questions in one breath, and Hong Zhu rolled his eyes as he listened to him. He even regretted bringing up this matter. The other women also looked at Song Qingshu with disdain. They couldn't figure out why a grown man like him would be so long-winded. My cousin-in-law is awesome. He's the handsome and rich second generation of the Shao family, and he can even perform magic." Jean Beibei pursed her lips and retorted loudly. Although she did not know Song Qingshu's identity, this guy was too arrogant, wasn't he? He actually compared Xiao Qian with himself. The Shao family? Song Qingshu carefully recalled and shook his head. "I've never heard of such a family in the martial arts circle. Handsome and rich? What's the use of being handsome and rich? He can't even protect his girlfriend. Magic tricks? Does he think that he can match up to my sister with this kind of small tricks? He's too naive." Jean Beibei's fury was immediately ignited. Glaring at Song Qingshu, she waved her fists and shouted, "Don't be too arrogant. If my cousin-in-law learns that you dare to hit on Sister Huawu, he will definitely come here and beat you up." With disdain on his face, Song Qingshu sneered. "Fine. Just let him come to me. At that time, I want to see who is the one who will beat the other up." "Beibei, don't talk nonsense. Xiao Qian is not so barbaric as to pick a fight with other people." Song Huawu comforted Jean Beibei first. Then she turned around and looked at Song Qingshu. Her face immediately turned cold. She had felt quite close to Song Qingshu before, but the guy's words had touched her sore spot. Her fondness for him immediately plummeted. She bowed to him and said casually, "Mr. Song, thank you for saving my life, but I'm just an ordinary person in the secular world. I don't think I'm related to you at all. I think you might have mistaken me for someone else." "Sister, why are you so polite to me?" Seeing the disgust on Song Huawu's face, Song Qingshu thought that she was unwilling to admit their blood relationship. He hurried to explain, but Song Huawu interrupted him before he opened his mouth. Song Huawu was even more annoyed that Song Qingshu kept calling her sister. She said stiffly, "Mr. Song, Xiaoqin and I are in love with each other. I don't think I need to report it to you." "Xiaoqin? The Xiao family? My God. Are you talking about the descendant of the Xiao family in the secular world? How can you do that?" Song Qingshu suddenly recalled that Song Bilian had once reported to him about the entanglement between Xiaoqin and Huawu. At that time he did not pay much attention to it, but now he knew that it was true. Chapter 11:17. Song Qingshu put on a straight face and advised sternly, "Huawu, you're a disciple of the Song family in the martial arts world. Although you haven't been recognized by the family, you can't hang out with a kid from the secular world. That's too embarrassing." "Song, Gong, see. I've already said that I'm not your sister. And no matter who I want to be with, it's my freedom. I'm afraid that's none of your business." Song Huawu clenched her fists tightly. Her trembling body showed how angry she was. Although Song Huawu was very grateful to Song Qingshu for saving her, this guy was too shameless. Not only did he look down on Xiao Chen and belittled him, but he also tried to stop her from falling in love with him freely. Even if Song Qingshu was really her brother, he was too controlling. That's right, Huawu is right. Hong Zhu, who had been neutral, could not stand it anymore. Song Qingshu was too arrogant. She could not hold back and said, "Song Qingshu, don't be in a hurry to stop other people's marriages. How did Song Huawu become your sister? Not to mention her, even I haven't heard about this from you. Can you explain it to me first? If you want to recognize her as a relative, you have to know the ins and outs, right?" This. Song Qingshu was silent for a while. Finally he looked at Song Huawu and said, "Actually, Huawu is my half-sister. However, back then, the family was very opposed to my father's relationship with Huawu's mother. They were unwilling to acknowledge Huawu's existence, so my father had no choice but to secretly send her to the secular world." "Then how do you know that Song Huawu is your sister? What if they have the same name?" Xiao Xiao asked. The girls nodded. They wanted to know the answer to this question too. "Because I knew about Huawu a long time ago," Song Qingshu said honestly. "When I found out about this, I specially sent Pang Bilian, Song Bilian, to the Supernatural Investigation Bureau to protect her. However, this guy is too selfish, so I taught him a few lessons." "Deputy Bureau Chief Song. You sent him?" Song Huawu asked doubtfully. Song Qingshu nodded calmly. Seeing that Song Huawu still did not believe him, he added, "Huawu, you were shot once, right? When I received the news, I specially went to the hospital to visit you and gave Song Bilian a small rejuvenation pill. Huawu, if you still don't believe me, you can call Song Bilian and ask him. He knows this very well." Song Huawu subconsciously took out her phone and found Song Bilian's number. She looked at the screen and hesitated for a while, not knowing if she should call him. She really wanted to know the truth, but she was also a little afraid. She was afraid that if things were really as Song Qingshu said, she would not be able to accept it. "Huawu, I understand how you feel, but the blood of the Song family flows in your veins. This is something that no one can change." Song Qingshu softened his tone when he saw that Song Huawu was wavering. "If you're really Dancing Flower Sister's brother, I don't think you're qualified to be one. Huawu has suffered so much in the secular world. Why didn't you bring her back? If we weren't arrested today, you wouldn't have done anything." Jean Bebe snorted and protested angrily. "Yes, I admit that I'm not qualified. Back then Song Qingshu, was just a second young master. I was not valued by the family and I didn't have much say. I could only secretly send people to protect you. I didn't even dare to tell the public that I had a sister." Song Qingshu clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "But it's different now. Now I have some status in the Song family and I've made up my mind. I'll bring you back sooner or later, and you'll be the eldest miss of the Song family." When the women heard Song Qingshu's emotional words, Jean Bebe and Xiao Xiao were slightly moved. Hongzhu was extremely shocked. She had seen Song Qingshu's hard work in the past few years. She thought that he was trying to climb up the social ladder for the sake of power. She didn't expect him to have such a reason. On the contrary, Song Huawu did not have much reaction after hearing what he said. She lowered her head and thought for a while. Then she asked calmly, "Okay, even if what you said is true, let me ask you. Where is my mother now? If you can bring her to see me, I'll believe everything you said." She has passed away. Song Qingshu's face turned a little gloomy when he heard Song Huawu's question. It seemed that he was unwilling to talk about this topic. After pondering for a while, he forced a smile and changed the topic. "Even if your mother is gone, you're still my sister. I'll never give up on you. Why don't you come back to the Song family with me now? Father will be very happy. As long. Haha, he's your father, not mine." Song Huawu suddenly became very emotional. She waved her hand to stop Song Qingshu's persuasion. Pointing at him, she asked word by word, "Tell me the truth. Why did my mother die? And why didn't your father protect her well?" Song Qingshu was very embarrassed. He did not know how to tell the truth. After thinking for a while, he could only comfort her with kind words. "Huawu, actually, I think there are some problems. We might as well think more optimistically. Don't say those useless things. How on earth did my mother die? Tell me quickly. Otherwise I'll leave now. I guarantee that you'll never find me again in this life. Don't ever think that I'll be your sister again." Before Song Qingshu finished speaking, Song Huawu interrupted him and shouted loudly. The other women present were all shocked. They did not expect that Song Huawu, who usually looked cold and quiet and spoke softly, could be so terrifying when she was angry. Although they could understand Song Huawu's feelings at the moment, they did not dare to step forward to persuade her. They could only look at each other, not knowing what to do. Song Qingshu's expression was not very good either. Seeing Song Huawu's unusual emotional fluctuations, he knew that this matter had left a deep scar in her heart. Thinking about it, any orphan who had no parents would find it difficult to control their emotions when they suddenly found out that they had a father and a mother, and that one of them was living well. A girl like Song Huawu, who was used to shouldering everything by herself, had an extremely fragile heart under her strong exterior. When she heard that her mother had passed away and that her father had sent her to the secular world, turning her into an orphan, and that she could not find any traces of Xiao Chen and was threatened to be arrested by the Tang clan, even someone as calm as her finally broke down under the pressure. Chapter 11:18. Looking at Song Huawu pitifully, Song Qingshu wanted to say something but hesitated. However, things had already come to this point, and it was clear that there was no room for redemption. He could only take a deep breath and said bitterly, "That year, Grandpa ordered your mother to be expelled from the Song family. Your mother was as tenacious as you, so she did not plead with anyone. Without saying anything, she left with you, who was still a baby. Later? What happened later?" Song Huawu's voice was a little hoarse. She had already vaguely guessed what happened later. Song Qingshu shook his head helplessly and said, When my father found her, she had already committed suicide. Only you, who was sleeping soundly, and a handwritten letter were left behind." Although she was prepared in her heart, Song Huawu still felt like a bolt from the blue. Her body softened and she almost fell. Fortunately, Hongzhu, who was standing not far from her, reached out and supported her. Only then did she manage to stand up. Seeing this, Song Qingshu sighed. He carefully took out a yellowed envelope from his arms and handed it to Song Huawu. He said with a heavy expression, "After my father witnessed this scene, he was greatly stimulated. He was extremely depressed and drowned his sorrows in alcohol all day long. He never had the courage to open this letter." Song Huawu stared at the envelope. For a moment she did not dare to reach out to take it. She only felt that her mind was in chaos. "Later, my father gave this letter to me and sent you to the secular world. He also repeatedly told me that I must send someone to take good care of you. If there is this opportunity in the future, I will take out the letter and give it to you." Song Qingshu told him everything that happened after that. Then he fell silent and looked at Song Huawu quietly. Song Huawu took the envelope with trembling hands. She felt that her hands were extremely heavy. She looked down at the envelope and saw the words Meng Xiao's last words, written in blood. Only then did she know that her biological mother's name was so beautiful. The beautiful handwriting contrasted with the dark red blood, revealing a kind of sadness and despair. Song Huawu stared blankly at the envelope and did not move for a long time. Drip. When a crystal-clear teardrop fell on the envelope, Song Huawu realized that her face was already covered in tears. At this moment she finally understood that her mother's name was no longer important. She had long disappeared from this world, and she would never have the chance to see her again. Huawu, it's already happened. Don't be too sad. Since Song Qingshu is so sincere and wants to invite you back to the Song family, why don't you consider it? Hongzhu walked over, pulled the grief-stricken Song Huawu into his arms, and said in a low voice, after all, he and his father haven't had a good time these past few years. Just take it as a chance to make it up to them. It's Sister Ao Huawu. Although the Song family's patriarch and that man are quite heartless, you are still related by blood. You are all a family. How about this? You can spend their money extravagantly after you get there. Consider it your revenge. Jin Beibei thought for a moment and added, besides, you still have my cousin-in-law. Even if you make the Song family bankrupt, my cousin-in-law will support you for the rest of your life. Sister Beibei, don't make a fuss. Don't you know where you are? Xiao Xiao glanced at Jin Beibei. She wanted to comfort Song Huawu, but her eyes turned red the moment she opened her mouth. It was because Xiao Xiao was the one who could sympathize with Song Huawu the most among all the people on the spot. She was an orphan herself. Had it not been for the Xiao family, her ending would probably have been even worse than Song Huawu's. Seeing that Song Huawu was crying so hard right now, she was touched too and could not say anything for a moment. Song Huawu cried for a while longer and finally stopped crying. She wiped the tears on her face and suddenly said, I will not go back to the Song family. Hongzhu and Jin Beibei exclaimed at the same time, with puzzled expressions on their faces. Xiao Xiao, on the other hand, did not say anything but simply nodded. Xiao Xiao could understand Song Huo. If Xiao Xiao had been driven out by her family and suddenly said that she would accept her, she would not have been able to accept it either. Besides, Song Huawu had been living alone for such a long time. She was even more reluctant to accept it emotionally. Huawu you. Song Qingshu opened his mouth hesitantly, but he did not know what to say. Song Huawu had calmed down. She carefully put away the envelope and raised her head, saying coldly, I don't care about the title of Miss Song, and I don't care how powerful the Song family is in the internal martial arts circle. Since my mother and I were driven out years ago, I have nothing to do with the Song family now. The purpose of my coming to the internal martial arts circle this time is to find Xiao Qin. I'm not interested in anything else. Looking at Song Huawu's cold expression, Song Qingshu said helplessly, Huawu, I know you're upset. Although Grandpa made a wrong decision, the Song family is your final home. I also know that you may not be able to accept this fact now, but I still hope that you can consider my invitation carefully. Song Qingshu knew that the Song family was in the wrong in this matter, and he also knew that Song Huawu would not go back with him obediently, so he did not force her. Song Huawu shook her head and said lightly, Young Master Song, I've made it very clear. Please go back. She had been an orphan since she was young and did not have much sense of belonging to her family. Since her mother was no longer in this world, she did not want to return to that inhumane family. Only by finding Xiao Chen and staying by his side would she be able to bring her a trace of comfort. However, after ordering her guest to leave, Song Huawu remembered that she was in the Hong family. She put away her gloomy mood and forced an apologetic smile on her face. She turned to Hongzhu and said, Hongzhu, can you arrange a room for us to stay in? I'm a little tired and would like to rest early. We still have to continue looking for Xiao Qin tomorrow. Yes, no problem. Come with me. Hongzhu readily agreed and left the hall with Song Huawu and the other women. When they walked out of the room, she secretly turned around and gave Song Qingshu a look, indicating that he should go back first and leave the rest to her for the time being. Song Qingshu nodded. He also felt that it was not suitable for him to stay in the Hong family any longer, lest he caused Song Huawu a second time. He could only leave the Hong family unhappily and return to the Song family to inform his father. Hundreds of miles away from the Hong family, in the forest near the open heaven gate, Xiao Chen was hiding behind a large tree with Xing Las, Tian Wangshou, and the other women. Chapter 11-19. Xiao Chen released his divine sense and carefully examined the surrounding environment. He discovered that there were many guards patrolling outside of Awakening Heaven Gate. There were also a few experts hiding vigilantly in the shadows. It seemed that the security was very tight. However, no matter how powerful an expert was, it was not enough in front of a cultivator like Xiao Chen. He roughly estimated that if he wanted to quietly sneak into Awakening Heaven Gate as long as he grasped the right timing, it should not be too difficult. However, the sky was not completely dark yet. Furthermore, little girl Xing had just mentioned that in another half an hour, the patrolling guards would be changing shifts. Therefore, for the sake of safety, Xiao Chen decided to wait a while before entering. Elder son lives in the courtyard on the west side. The courtyard on the east side is where sect leader Situ lives. Little girl Xing picked up a branch and drew a simple layout of Awakening Heaven Gate on the ground. She pointed to a location and said, "You can sneak in from this place. The security here is relatively lax. As for me, I will not go in to avoid arousing elder son's suspicions." Actually, little girl Xing was still in a state of confusion. She did not know if she should help Xiao Chen solve his problem or stand on Awakening Heaven Gate's side to protect the sect. Unable to make a decision, she simply pushed the matter aside and did not plan on going in with Xiao Chen. Otherwise, if she met disciples of the sect that she was familiar with, it would be hard for her to explain. "I say, little girl Xing, what is your full name?" Xiao Chen glanced at the sloppy map, and suddenly raised his head, asking with interest. Why are you suddenly asking this?" Little girl Xing was startled. She did not understand what Xiao Chen was playing at. That's right. If my husband Xiao Chen didn't mention it, Sister Sour wouldn't have noticed. I don't even know your full name. Tian Sour also added, "Tell us your name. Otherwise, if we keep calling you little girl Xing or young master lady boy, how unfriendly would that be? It's better to call you by your name, or we can call you Xing." Tian Sour pinched his chin and repeated the two words Xing a few times. He felt that it was quite smooth to say. Xiao Chen shrugged and said, "I've known you for so long, and I only know that you have the nickname of Young Master Yao. Others also call you Young Master Xing, but that can't be your real name, right? Tell me your full name so that I know how to address you in the future. What do you think? Weren't you the one who gave me the nickname Prince Ladyboy? You still have the nerve to say it out loud." Little Miss Xing angrily rebuked. Then, she intentionally turned her head and looked at the open heaven gate not far away, as if she was unwilling to mention her own name. "If it weren't for the fact that you always look like a woman dressed as a man, why would I give you such a nickname?" Xiao Chen had an innocent look on his face as he said in all seriousness, "Furthermore, how awkward would it look for a girl to wear men's clothing every day? Besides, some places are wrapped too tightly and airtight. It will shrink very easily." After he finished speaking, Xiao Chen put on a "you know what I'm talking about" expression and glanced at a certain part of Miss Xing with a smirk. "What shrink? I didn't wrap it too tightly, right?" Little Miss Xing was confused at first, but when she saw Xiao Chen staring at the area in front of her, she instantly understood what he meant. Her face became as red as a piece of cloth and she angrily scolded, "You bastard, where are you looking at? So what if I like wearing men's clothing? What does that have to do with you?" "Shoo!" Tian Souring jumped in fright and hurriedly raised his index finger to his lips, making a shushing gesture. He pointed to a place not far away and said in a low voice, Xing, don't speak so loudly. Look, even the patrolling guards have been lured over by you. What should we do? If they discover us, we'll be in trouble. Sister Souring doesn't want to die yet." Little Miss Xing also sensed that the situation was not good. She hurriedly extended her hand to cover her mouth, but in her panic, she subconsciously took a step back. She accidentally stepped on a branch under her foot, making a crisp kacha sound. She was so scared that her whole body trembled and her heart trembled. "Who's there?" The group of guards happened to be patrolling nearby, and when they heard the commotion they loudly shouted. They vigilantly stared at the place where the sound came from, and cautiously approached. Seeing that the guards were getting closer and closer, little Miss Xing was anxious and prepared to take the initiative to step out. After all, she was a member of Awakening Heaven sect, so the guards wouldn't suspect her too much. She would first send them away before anything else. However, before little Miss Xing could step out, Xiao Chen pulled her back, smiled and snapped his fingers. Then he quietly stood in the same spot, leisurely and not at all worried. Little Miss Xing was about to go crazy. She didn't know why Xiao Chen would pull her back and not let her go, but since things had already developed to this point, she could only close her eyes and wait for the guards to come over before making a move. However, as she waited, she heard the approaching footsteps gradually fading away. Little Miss Xing was greatly astonished. She opened her eyes and carefully peeked her head out to take a look. To her surprise, she discovered that the guards had all turned around and returned to their original patrolling positions. It was as if nothing had happened. "Wawa. Husband Xiao Chen, you are really too amazing. You can control so many people at once." Tian Souring cheered and gave a thumbs up to Xiao Chen. Then she pounced on him and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Then with a face full of yearning she said, "When can Sister Souring learn this move? Then I will be able to dominate the martial arts world, he." Alright. Don't show off your love in public. Is it fun or not? Little Miss Xing's heart had just returned to her stomach when she turned around and saw this scene. She couldn't help but say in a bad mood. Tsk, you are obviously envious, jealous, and hateful. Just now, you were the one who was careless and lured the guards over. If it wasn't for husband Xiao Qin, sister Souring would definitely be exposed. Tian Souring rolled her eyes and thought to herself, so what if I show off my love? In the future, I still want to practice 3 cultivation and 4 cultivation with husband Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin shrugged his shoulders carelessly. Even if there were a few more of these low-level guards, he could use his mind control to control them all. It wasn't a problem at all. Little Miss Xing directly ignored Tian Souring. She looked down at the direction of the shadows and calculated the time. Then she pointed at the day's Tang Tang and said to Xiao Qin, "Alright, it's almost time to change shifts. Xiao Qin, hurry up and get ready. You can go in 5 minutes. Remember to bring Tang Tang along. Be careful when you go in." Isn't there still 5 minutes? What's the rush? Xiao Qin stretched his body and suddenly thought of something. He asked, "Oh right, little Miss Xing, you haven't answered the question I asked you just now. What is your name? Why is it so difficult to know your name?" Chapter 11:20. Xinggongzi. My name is Xinggongzi. Isn't it just a name? There was no end to the questions, it was so annoying. Didn't I say it when we were at Lanqing University? Do you have amnesia? Xing girl said impatiently. She was obviously very dissatisfied with her name. But she couldn't do anything about it. Everyone called her that since she was young, so she could only accept it passively. And? Your name is Young Master Xing? Xiao Qin was stunned for a moment, but he quickly recalled the self-introduction that Xing Chick had given him during class at Lanqing University. He immediately burst into laughter. "Ha, your name is really not bad. I will also change my name to Xiao Gongzi in the future. It sounds so cool. No, I want to change my name to Handsome Brother Xiao. Only then will it match my attributes." Go away, stop fooling around. Look, the guards over there are starting to change shifts. You should hurry and take Tang Tang in. Tian Suruan will wait for you here with me. We'll definitely be fine. Go and come back quickly. Don't waste time. Xing girl waved her hand helplessly. She couldn't be bothered to argue with Xiao Qin. It was more important to get down to business. Seeing that there was movement at the gate, Xiao Qin nodded and put away his playful thoughts. He picked up Tang Tang and prepared to walk in the direction of Qitian Gate. But just as he took a step, he suddenly felt the phone in his pocket vibrate. At first, Xiao Qin thought that someone sent him a WeChat message, so he didn't pay much attention and continued to walk forward. However, after Xiao Qin took a few steps, he felt that the phone still didn't stop vibrating. This was obviously not WeChat. It seemed that someone should be calling him. After hesitating, Xiao Qin turned around and put Tang Tang down first. Then he took out his phone and glanced at it. Jianghu's name was displayed on the phone. Xiao Qin was a little surprised, but he still pressed the answer button. "Xiao Qin, where are you now? Something big happened to the Jia family." Before Xiao Qin could speak, Jianghu on the other end of the phone said impatiently, and his voice sounded very urgent. "What's going on? I'm now near the open heaven gate. Don't be too anxious. Tell me what happened." Xiao Qin frowned and pulled Tang Tang with his other free hand. He walked back and thought that it was fortunate that he had not yet entered the open heaven gate, otherwise it would be troublesome. Seeing that Xiao Qin hadn't gone far before returning with his phone, Miss Xing and Tian Suruan looked at each other in bewilderment. Since there was no one around them, it was very quiet. Xiao Qin's phone was very loud, and they could also hear Jianghu's anxious voice on the other end of the phone. It sounded like something really serious had happened. Just now, Jia Yubian brought a group of people and injured Grandpa. They even captured Jia Tuyao, Jia Yuto, and other family members. Only me and the others saw that the situation was not good and escaped into the secret passage. Jianghu lowered his voice and said hurriedly, "Now the Jia family is basically under the control of Jia Yubian's people. They are searching around outside. They should be here to catch me and the others." Jianghu's voice sounded very nervous and he kept panting. It should be because he escaped in a hurry and hadn't recovered yet. Motherf **Ker, I didn't expect Turtle Whip to have so many tricks up his sleeve. I should have killed them directly before. Xiao Qin suddenly became furious and scolded fiercely. Considering that Jianghu's situation was more urgent, he immediately said, "Where are you now?" "I'll rush back immediately." Jianghu said in a low voice, We are in a secret passage in the backyard of the Jia family. It should be quite safe for the time being. Boom! Before Jia Muzin's voice had died away, Xiao Qin heard a sudden loud noise on the other end of the phone, and then came Jia Yubian's sinister laughter. Ha ha! You two stinking brats really hiding here. What, did you think I couldn't find you? I might as well tell you that I was responsible for building this secret passage. What a complete idiot. Jia Muzin and the Jia Renzhong were both shaken to the ground by the huge impact, and their phones fell to the side. Fortunately, they didn't hang up, and Xiao Qin could still hear the conversation between the two sides. Jia Yubian, I didn't expect you to be so despicable. You actually joined forces with outsiders to injure my grandfather, and even imprisoned most of the Jia family. What do you want? Jia Muzin glared at Jia Yubian and shouted loudly. What do I want? Why don't you ask your grandfather what he wants? Jia Yubian laughed strangely and spat. He looked coldly at Jia Muzin and the Jia Renzhong and said with a gloomy face, that old thing should have died long ago. I have made so many contributions to the Jia family, and I have worked hard for everything. I didn't expect him to be so muddle-headed as to side with you two stinking brats who have no strength and ability. He even refused to let Hui Yan be the successor. He is really King blind. The successor is personally chosen by grandfather through a family competition. Since Jia Huiyan doesn't have the ability, then you can't blame others for being too outstanding, because others are more suitable than him for this position. At this time Jia Renzhong also said angrily, Jia Yubian, you have done such a disgraceful thing. Are you not afraid of being struck by lightning? Jia Muzin propped himself up and helped Jia Renzhong up as well. He glared at Jia Yubian, wishing he could just slap him to death with a single palm. What a joke. I think the ones to be struck to death should be the two of you, right? You two bastards, what qualifications do you have to lecture me? Why don't you take a look at your own situation? You are simply courting death. Jia Yubian sneered and slowly walked in front of Jia Muzin and the Jia Renzhong. He raised his hand and gave each of them a slap. Pah, pah. The left side of their faces turned red at the same time, and blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. However, the two of them moved in unison. Neither of them revealed any expression of fear. Instead, they both clenched their teeth and fiercely glared at Jia Yubian. Enough, don't talk nonsense with these two brats. Hurry up and capture them. Prepare for the next step of the plan. Jia Yubian still wanted to make a move, but a black-clothed man behind him suddenly said indifferently and then waved his hand. The other black-clothed men immediately rushed forward and quickly and efficiently tied up Jia Muzin and the Jia Renzhong. They were escorted out of the secret passage, and then the black-clothed men also left. Jia Yubian was about to follow them when he suddenly saw a glimmer of light on the ground not far away. He was a little surprised and walked over to take a look. He discovered that it was the phone that Jia Muzin had thrown away. On it was Xiao Chen's name and it was still in a call state. Chapter 11:21. Jia Yubian's expression did not change. He proudly picked up the phone and said with a smirk, Yo Xiao Chen. You must have heard the conversation just now, right? If you still regard Jia Muzin as your friend, come back to the Jia family and let's sit down and have a good talk. Turtle Whip, I can give you a chance. Now immediately release Jia Muzin and the Jia Renzhong, and then take your disabled son and roll out of the Jia family. Otherwise, when I get back, don't even think about having a good ending. Xiao Qin clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he spat out each word. Originally, he did not want to negotiate with Jia Yubian. After all, it was not easy for him to reach Qiqiang Gate and he could cure Tang Tang immediately. It would be best if they could solve it peacefully. However, it seemed that Xiao Chen's attempt did not have any effect. Ha. When Jia Yubian heard Xiao Chen's warning, he was not angry but laughed. He provoked arrogantly, It seems that you are as stupid as that idiot Jia Muzin. Now his life is in my hands. What qualifications do you have to negotiate with me? Are you out of your mind? Turtle Whip, you will regret your choice now. Xiao Chen clenched his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. His rage surged to the top of his head, and he wished that he could immediately dismember Jia Yubian and execute him. Xiao Chen, since you said you have a choice, I might as well give you two choices now. Jia Yubian felt the anger of Xiao Chen on the other end of the phone. It was as comfortable as drinking a can of cold soda on a hot summer day. He said slowly, the first is that you can never come back to the Jia family. The second is that you come and kowtow to me a few times, and then break your own tendons and vessels. But according to my understanding of you, I think you will choose the second one, and be a righteous idiot. Ahaha. Oh, I choose the third one, which is to go back and torture you until you beg for death. Finally, I give you a suggestion. Hurry up and prepare 2 Nanmu coffins, one for you and the other for your stupid son. After Xiao Qin said coldly, he directly hung up the phone and began to think about the next plan. Diske. What the hell? You only know how to act cool until now. Jia Yubian didn't seem to care at all. He threw Jia Muzin's phone to the ground and stomped on it a few times. Only when the phone was trampled on and turned into scrap did he swagger out of the secret room. In the forest outside the open heaven gate, little Miss Xing and the others stood uneasily in place, watching Xiao Qin. Just now, the conversation between Xiao Qin and Jia Yubian was heard by Miss Xing and Tian Wangchuan without missing a single word. The two girls saw that after Xiao Qin put down his phone, he kept frowning as if he was thinking about something. They looked at each other and didn't dare to speak. They could only stand there quietly and wait. After waiting for a while, Xiao Qin seemed to have made a decision. He raised his head and looked at Xing Gongzi. He said, Xing Gongzi, you must have heard the phone call just now. I'm going back to the Jia clan immediately. However, you don't have to go back with me. I have other things for you to do. What is it? Xing Gongzi asked subconsciously. Help me steal some information from the open heaven gate. It's about the experimental drug Tang Tang. Since I can't directly go to Elder Sun to get the antidote, I can only start from other aspects. I want to see if there's any relevant information that I can take out and study. Xiao Qin said lightly. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. Okay, no problem. Hurry up and go save Jia Muzin and the others. Leave the matter of Tang Tang to me. Xing Gongzi didn't even think about it and directly nodded in agreement. However, she immediately regretted it. She was a little annoyed. Why did she listen to Xiao Qin so much? What was the situation just now? Why did I suddenly agree to it? Well, then I'll leave it to you. After you've successfully obtained the information, we'll contact each other again. Xiao Qin wanted to pat Xing Gongzi's shoulder, but his hand suddenly stopped in midair. He turned around and touched her little head. He said softly, but the most important thing is to pay attention to your safety. If it's really difficult to get, don't take too big of a risk. Just give up. If worst comes to worst, I'll come back again. I know. Xing Gongzi's little face inexplicably blushed. She bit her lower lip and wanted to say something. However, she couldn't say anything in the end. She could only nod and watch as Xiao Qin left. Xiao Qin was wholeheartedly thinking about Jia Muzin's safety. He didn't notice the change in Xing Gongzi's expression. He quickly took out his flying sword and brought Tang Tang and Tian Suruan onto it. He also stepped on it and urged his mental power. Whoosh! He broke through the air and disappeared into the distance in the blink of an eye. Although there was a lot of movement, the guards nearby were all changing shifts. No one noticed the movement of the flying sword. Xing Gongzi took a deep breath and calmed her emotions. Then she put on a cold face and slowly walked towards the open heaven gate. The calm Xing Gongzi's heart was violently churning. She couldn't understand her own actions no matter how she thought about it. How could I so easily agree to Xiao Qin's request? And I even promised him to steal the sect's secret information. Isn't this too dangerous? If I had known earlier, I would have thought it through first. Now that he had already run away, there was no turning back. I had to do it even if I didn't want to. Damn Xiao Qin, stinky Xiao Qin. If you have something to say, then say it nicely. Why did you have to touch my head for no reason? I'm not a kitten or a puppy. I'm also not your pet. How can you touch me whenever you want? This is really infuriating. While her mind was letting her imagination run wild, Xing Gongzi unknowingly walked into the open heaven gate. Although the guards were changing shifts, some people saw her. However, everyone recognized this lone sect disciple. Therefore, no one went up to question her. Looking at the scattered buildings in the distance, Xing Gongzi lightly sighed. Since she had already returned, she could only think of a way to trick Elder Sun over. Then she could plan to steal the information. Xiao Qin rode on the flying sword and flew at full speed for 2 days. When he passed by the heavenly jade mine, he discovered that it was still not under Jia Yubian's control. He quickly landed and found Jia Hongyong to get some spirit jades to replenish his strength. Then he continued to rush towards the Jia clan. Jia Hongyong didn't know what had happened for the time being, and Xiao Qin didn't tell him much either. He only warned him to keep a close eye on him, and not to let anyone he wasn't familiar with or not on Jia Muzin's side into the mine. Jia Hongyong didn't know what was going on. However, he still listened to Xiao Qin's words. He immediately agreed and specially increased the number of guards in the mine. Xiao Qin flew for a while. It wasn't until the second night that he finally arrived near the Jia clan. He first found a safe place and put Tian Suruan and Tang Tang down. After making proper arrangements for them, He gave the token that controlled Tang Tang to Tian Suruan for safekeeping and told her to take good care of Tang Tang. Chapter 11:22. He was now going to the Jia family to rescue people. At present, the entire Jia family should be under Jia Yubian's control. The specific situation was still unknown. Xiaoqin did not intend to bring the weak Tian Suruan and the confused Tang Tang in. Otherwise, it would be easy to make mistakes and he would not be able to protect them if he was careless. Although Tian Suruan was usually stubborn, he was very obedient at critical moments. He did not pester Xiaoqin endlessly. Instead, he told him to be careful and come back early. Then he obediently stayed where he was. After making all the necessary preparations, Xiaoqin set up a monitoring formation and seized the time to sneak into the Jia family under the cover of night. However, out of caution, Xiaoqin did not rush in rashly. Instead, he first used his divine sense to check the location of Jia Muzin and the others. After looking around, he discovered that other than Jia Muzin, who was tied up in the hall by Jia Yubian and personally guarded by people, the others were locked up in Jia Muzin's room in the courtyard. Furthermore, there were 2 men in black standing guard outside the door. After thinking for a while, Xiaoqin decided to rescue the others first. After all, Jia Muzin had more people on his side. If he went to rescue them directly, it would easily alarm the enemy. It was safer to rescue the others first. Thinking of this, Xiaoqin directly rode the flying sword and quietly came to the top of the courtyard. At present, he still did not know the strength of the 2 men in black. With the mentality of giving it a try, Xiaoqin released his mind power to control all of them. If he succeeded, there would be no need to use force. Unfortunately, the reality was often not so smooth. When Xiaoqin's mind power invaded the bodies of the men in black, he was shocked to find that he could not control their behavior at all. What was going on? Ever since Xiaoqin learned to use mind power, he had never encountered a situation where he could not control it. Just as he was puzzled, the 2 black-robed men seemed to have noticed something amiss. Whoosh, whoosh. Hearing the sound of something breaking through the air, the 2 men in black turned around and looked up at the same time. They slapped heavily at Xiaoqin, who was standing in the air. Fortunately, Xiaoqin was still vigilant and reacted in time. He controlled the flying sword to dodge the 2 strong chis. At this time, there was no meaning in staying in the air. Xiaoqin simply landed in front of the black-robed man. It seems like you're quite capable. You're only at level 5 honorable realm, but you were able to discover my location so quickly. Xiaoqin said calmly. However, in his heart he felt that these 2 men in black were not simple. First of all, based on the fact that he couldn't control them, this wasn't something an ordinary venerable could do. According to the Elder Heaven Ancestor, his mental strength should be able to suppress a venerable of the same level. Secondly, they were able to sense the abnormality so quickly, and directly determine that Xiaoqin was in the air from the source of the spiritual power release, and then instantly counterattack. This was even more unbelievable. This was the first time Xiaoqin had encountered such a situation. When the 2 men in black saw Xiaoqin, they did not respond to his probing. Instead, they charged at him from both sides without a word. Then they each slapped their palms towards Xiaoqin's chest and head. The 2 fierce palms were obviously using their full strength. It seemed like they were planning to kill Xiaoqin in one blow. Xiaoqin originally wanted to find out some information, but he didn't expect the 2 men to attack him so quickly. However, his reaction was also very fast. Although his opponents were only at level 5 honorable realm, he didn't dare to be careless. Both his palms struck out with all his strength towards the 2 men in black. Bang! The 3 palms collided with each other, producing a muffled sound. It was clearly 2 palms, but it sounded like there was only one sound. However, to Xiaoqin's surprise, the 2 men in black acted as if nothing had happened. They were only pushed back a few steps and their faces were expressionless. It seemed like they were not affected at all. On the other hand, Xiaoqin was almost sent flying. He took a few steps back to alleviate the impact. He felt his palms go numb and his internal organs were churning. His throat tasted sweet and he almost vomited blood. Xiaoqin cursed in his heart. Was this really a level 5 honorable realm? Even when he was fighting Jia Jinyan, he was only at this level. Moreover, he had used almost 100% of his strength just now. Why did it seem like it didn't have any effect on them? Xiaoqin wanted to adjust his breathing for a while to calm the chaotic qi and blood in his body. However, just as he regained his footing, the men in black attacked him again, one from the front and one from the back. This time they didn't attack at the same time. Instead, they split into 2 groups. The former attacked Xiaoqin twice, while the latter observed closely from the side, waiting for an opportunity to attack. They were ready to block Xiao Chen's escape route at any time. Motherf asterisk her. Don't be fooled by the fact that the two of you don't know how to talk. You're pretty good at cooperating. Xiao Chen cursed. First, he rolled to the side, dodging the attack of the first black-clothed man. However, before he could land and stand up straight, the second black-clothed man's attack followed him like a shadow. Bang! At that moment, Xiao Chen's center of gravity was unstable. He couldn't defend himself in time. Even though he had already circulated his primordial chi to protect himself, he still took the full brunt of the attack. He was sent flying a few meters away and landed heavily on the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Without waiting for Xiao Chen to stand up, the two men in black turned around again, assumed a fighting stance and charged straight at him. Xiao Chen was at his wit's end. Even though the men in black only displayed the strength of a level 5 honorable, their martial arts techniques could reach the power of a level 8 or even level 9 honorable. They were almost at the level of a perfected honorable. Previously, when he was fighting with Jia Jinyan, a perfected honorable, Xiao Chen had only gained a slight advantage by relying on the Elder Heaven Ancestor's possession. However, under the pincer attack of the two men in black, even if the Elder Heaven Ancestor came out to help him, he might not have a chance of winning. Master, don't worry. I'll help you kill them. Just as Xiao Chen was at his wit's end, a voice rang out in his mind. Then, a ball of bluish-purple flames came out of his body and stopped in front of Xiao Chen for a while. It was the flame of the underworld that he hadn't seen for a long time. The flame of the underworld was different from before. The color of the flames was extremely thick, and the huge ball of flames burned brightly in the air. Its aura was quite terrifying. As Xiao Chen's strength increased, the flame of the underworld also had the strength of an honorable after it awakened. After pausing for a moment, it immediately split into two and pounced at the two men in black. But what caused Xiao Chen to be taken aback was that when the two black-clothed men saw the two balls of flames aggressively attacking towards them, not only did they not show the slightest bit of fear, they even increased their speed and continued to rush towards him. It was as if in their eyes their only goal was to kill Xiao Chen. Everything else was just fleeting clouds. Who? The men in black did not dodge. The two balls of flame of the underworld smashed directly onto their bodies and immediately set them on fire. Chapter 11:23. Xiao Chen was surprised to find that the flame of the underworld could penetrate their clothes and burst into countless sparks on their bodies, burning them up. The two black-clothed men instantly became flaming men, but the strange thing was, even though their skin and flesh were already making sizzling sounds, the two of them did not let out any screams as if they did not feel any pain. They still brandished their palms in a straight line towards Xiao Chen. Just as the palm wind from the black-clothed men was about to touch Xiao Chen's body, the flames burning on their bodies suddenly surged. In the blink of an eye, they were burned to ashes along with their bones. Xiao Chen only felt a gust of wind blow past, and then he saw two pieces of black clothes fluttering to the ground. The entire scene was extremely strange. Damn Nethery, isn't your new skill a little too overbearing? The people are burned but the clothes are still there. Feels like a horror movie. I'll give you 5 yuan for this special effect. Xiao Chen looked down at the black clothes on the ground, and then looked at the flame of the underworld floating in the air. He could not help but give a thumbs up in praise. Actually, it's nothing. The key is that Master's level has been greatly improved so I can also benefit from it. The two flame of the underworld made a naughty laugh, then turned a circle in the air, gradually merged into a ball, and slowly got into Xiao Chen's body. Xiao Chen looked down and found that he did not get any sparks. It seemed that the flame of the underworld could be released to the target. Elder Heaven Ancestor, who are these two people? With the danger averted, Xiao Chen heaved a long sigh of relief. He asked, could they be mutes? It doesn't feel like it. Not only did my mind control not work on them, but they were also lit by Nethery. They didn't know pain and rushed to me like a kamikaze team. They really dared to die. Xiao Chen said as he squatted down and rummaged in the two black clothes, trying to find some clues. But he did not find anything that could prove the identity of the men in black, so he could only throw the clothes aside gloomily. Well, have you noticed that they have a lot in common with Tang Tang? I guess these two are also the victims of that experimental potion. Not only do they not feel pain but their hidden strength is also much higher than they look. Elder Heaven Ancestor calmly analyzed as he recalled Tang Tang's appearance and compared her with the black-clothed man. If you put it that way, it does look like it. Xiao Chen nodded and sighed. Fortunately, Nethery came to help. Otherwise, I would have been crippled. Master, you don't have to thank me. This is what I should do. The flame of the underworld replied with a smile. Xiaoqin patted the dust off his clothes. While walking toward his room, he said in his divine sense, Nethery, I guess there will be a few more guys like this later. At that time I can only count on you. Don't be courteous with them. Once you meet them, just kill them. Master, if there are only one or two of these guys, I can help you deal with them. But if there are too many of them, it will be a little difficult. After all, it will consume a lot of my energy to use a big move. The flame of the underworld cautiously said. Nethery also felt very uneasy about not being able to help her master. However, killing those two people had already consumed a lot of her energy. If there were another 10 or 8 black-clothed men, she would definitely not be able to handle them. No way. Xiaoqin was stunned. He pondered for a while and said, There are several black-clothed men in the hall. I guess they are all puppets. If you can't do it, you can only let Elder Heaven Ancestor possess you. Otherwise, if you can't deal with those people, you may suffer a lot. Shaking his head, Xiaoqin did not intend to think so much for the time being. He directly pushed open the door of Jia Muzin's room and walked in. When the people in the room saw the door being opened, they were all bewildered. However, when they saw Xiaoqin walk in, their faces quickly became excited. They stood up and surrounded Xiaoqin. So, Hero Xiao, you are so considerate of us. You even risked your life to save us. I don't know how to thank you. Jia Yuto stood in the front, excitedly rubbing his hands and said with a flattering face. Jia Tuyao stood not far from him, his face darkening. He didn't have a good impression of Xiaoqin. But now he was saved by someone else. At this moment, his mood was very complicated and he didn't know what to say. Oh, you don't need to thank me too much. Just stay away from me. Xiaoqin pushed Jia Yuto away with a disgusted face. He looked around, walked to Jia Renzhong and asked with concern, Renzhong, are you okay? Are you hurt? Where is Master Jia? Jia Yuto had been snubbed by Xiaoqin. Seeing that Xiaoqin didn't want to see him, Jia Yuto awkwardly curved his mouth, stepped back to stand beside Jia Tuyao, and silently cursed Xiaoqin. I'm okay. But Master Jia is seriously injured. Brother Xiao, it's good that you are here. Go and see him. He is resting on the bed in the inner room. Jia Renzhong sighed heavily, separated the crowd with Xiaoqin, and walked into the inner room. When they came to the bed in the inner room, Xiaoqin saw Jia Jinyan lying on the bed with a pale face and his eyes tightly closed. Jia Jinyan's breathing was very weak, as if he would die at any moment. Xiaoqin could not help but jump in fright. He quickly stretched out his hand to check Jia Jinyan's pulse. Only then did he realize that Jia Jinyan's injuries were actually not too serious. It was just that anxiety had attacked his heart, causing his meridians to stagnate and his heart to be blocked. That was why he had become like this. He must have been angered by Jia Yubian's sudden betrayal. Xiaoqin, why are you here? Jia Jinyan, who had his eyes closed, suddenly felt a trace of warmth coming from his wrist. He slowly opened his eyes and saw that the person who was feeling his pulse by the bed was Xiaoqin. Jia Jinyan blurted out in surprise. Master, don't talk. Let me give you a massage. While pressing on Jia Jinyan's acupoints, Xiaoqin said blandly, Your meridians are stagnant because of the fire that attacked your heart. I'll help you to smooth your qi and blood, relax your meridians and activate your collaterals. After that, you only need to rest for a while and your injury will be healed. Xiaoqin didn't want to expose his ability to cure diseases with Yuan Qi for the time being. Therefore, he simply transferred his Yuan Qi bit by bit into Jia Jinyan's body with the help of a massage. Alas, don't worry about my old bones. I just want to ask you one thing. Jia Jinyan wanted to hold Xiaoqin, but suddenly he felt a stream of qi flowing up from his lungs. He couldn't help but cough a few times and spit out a few mouthfuls of black blood. After that, he felt much more comfortable. Chapter 11:24. Seeing Jia Jinyan's surprised expression, Xiaoqin explained simply, This technique of mine is a unique skill of my family. It can soothe the internal organs, relax the meridians, and promote blood circulation. The effect is very fast. Oh. Jia Jinyan nodded his head, not fully understanding. Then he thought of his own matters. He quickly grabbed Xiaoqin's hand and said eagerly, Hero Xiao, I know that your strength is definitely above mine. Now that the Jia family is in trouble, can I ask you to help me clean up the family and get rid of this unfilial son, Jia Yubian? Then you can save Musin safely. The Jia family can only rely on him in the future. You don't have to say this. I will naturally go and save him. After all, he is my best friend. Xiao Qin smiled and continued to massage Jia Jinyan as he spoke unhurriedly. That's great. Then. Jia Jinyan was overjoyed and wanted to ask Xiao Qin to set off immediately. However, Xiao Qin didn't seem to be in a hurry, so Jia Jinyan didn't know what to say at the moment. Xiao Qin said indifferently, everything has its priorities. Right now, the extravasated blood in your body is blocked, and it has already affected your heart meridian. I have to get all the extravasated blood out of your body first. Otherwise, with your current condition, I'm afraid you won't be able to hold on for long. You are Jia Muzin's grandfather. I can't just leave you to die, can I? If Jia Muzin knew that I didn't care about his grandfather's safety, he would definitely blame me. Jia Jinyan closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and nodded. Although he was still very worried about Jia Muzin's safety, Xiao Qin really didn't lie. He knew his own body the best. It was indeed at a critical juncture, and he had no choice but to save him. The only thing he could do now was to let Xiao Qin massage him first. After he got a little better, he would ask Xiao Qin to think of a way to deal with Jia Yubian and the helper he invited. At the same time in the Jia family's hall. On the mahogany chair that originally belonged to Jia Jinyan, Jia Yubian was sitting leisurely with his legs crossed. In his heart, he was fantasizing about how he would manage the family's business in the future. He was also calculating how much spirit jade he would need to use to exchange for a peak-grade medicinal pill for Jia Huoyan to mend his dantian. Then he would let Jia Huoyan inherit the position of family head. After that, he would retreat behind the scenes and control the other affairs of the family. At that time, with power in his hands, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted? Jia Yubian, I think that Xiao Qin is already here. Just as Jia Yubian was feeling complacent, the black-clothed leader who was with him before suddenly walked in from the door with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, "Who's here?" Jia Yubian was pulled out of his fantasy. He was in a bad mood and asked subconsciously. The leader of the men in black glared at him and continued, "Just now, a disciple of the sect came to report to me that the two men who were guarding the other members of the Jia clan suddenly lost their signal. I suppose they have been killed by Xiao Qin. Let's go and meet him first." What? Killed? Elder Qin, didn't you say before that they would have no problem dealing with Xiao Qin? How could they be killed? Jia Yubian finally heard Xiao Qin's name clearly. He was so scared that he almost fell off the chair. After he stood up with great difficulty, Jia Yubian's face darkened and he reprimanded loudly, "Are these biohumans that you Awakening Heaven sect have researched reliable? I invested a lot of money in them. How could they be killed by Xiao Qin so easily?" Jia Yubian was very shocked at this time. He had been secretly cooperating with Awakening Heaven sect for many years behind Jia Jinyan's back. Many private, under-the-table transactions were jointly promoted by the two parties. There had never been any mistakes. This operation was the same. Previously, Elder Sun had vowed to him that he would do his best to ensure that Jia Yubian took the position of Jia clan's family head. Elder Sun had also specially asked Elder Qin to bring a team of biohumans to assist. Unexpectedly, two of them had died so easily. How could Jia Yubian not be anxious and angry? What? Are you doubting the strength of our Awakening Heaven sect? Elder Qin raised the corner of his mouth and glanced at Jia Yubian with disdain. Don't forget, it was you who cried and begged us to help. Now only two of our sect's toys have died. You have already begun to question the ability of Awakening Heaven sect? It seems that your trust in Awakening Heaven sect is only SOSO. When I return this time, I will report to sect leader Situ and reevaluate your loyalty to Awakening Heaven sect. This? Elder Qin, I didn't mean that. Don't misunderstand. I just think that Xiao Qin is very cunning. Even Jia Jinyan, that old B***starred, can't do anything to him. That's why I'm a little worried. I'm afraid that you will also suffer in his hands. After all, we have already come this far. We can't take it lightly and fall in the hands of this guy. Jia Yubian couldn't help but shiver and quickly explained with a humble face. He's just a kid who still smells of his mother's milk. What's there to be afraid of? Elder Qin impatiently waved his hand and said, "Enough. Don't say such useless things. Hurry up and bring Jia Muzin along. We will be heading over immediately." Glaring fiercely at Jia Yubian, Elder Qin couldn't be bothered to talk with him anymore. He directly walked out the door and waved to the other black-clothed men. He quickly ran towards Jia Muzin's courtyard. Seeing that Elder Qin didn't pursue the matter any further, Jia Yubian let out a sigh of relief. He walked over to the bound Jia Muzin and gave him a heavy kick. Jia Muzin had been in a clear-headed state the entire time. Therefore he had heard every word of the conversation between Jia Yubian and Elder Qin. Even though he had been kicked, he still looked at Jia Yubian with a mocking expression. Jia Yubian glared at him and fiercely said, "It's all your fault, you little brat. You only know how to do bad things. Of all the people you could have brought back, you just had to bring back trouble like Xiao Qin. Not only did I fail to make Huoyan the patriarch, but I also wasted so much effort fawning over this and that. In a moment I will deal with you and Xiao Qin. It can also be considered as helping my son vent his resentment. Keep dreaming. With Xiao Qin's strength, getting rid of the few of you is a piece of cake. Just you wait. It won't be long before you and Jia Huoyan will pay the price for everything you've done today." Jia Muzin didn't show the slightest bit of fear as he coldly retorted. From his point of view, since Xiao Qin could easily deal with 2 black-clothed men, the rest would definitely not be a problem. Jia Yubian was simply seeking his own death. You can continue to talk big. In any case, after today, you won't have the chance to talk anymore. Now I will let you talk to your heart's content." Jia Yubian didn't get angry. Instead he laughed and gave Jia Muzin another kick. Then he picked him up and chased after Elder Chen and the others. Chapter 11:25. Quickly arriving at Jia Muzin's courtyard, Elder Chen looked around vigilantly. He didn't find any trace of Xiao Qin, but he did see 2 black clothes on the ground. The style of the clothes was very familiar, and it should belong to the 2 biohumans that were killed. But what was strange was that the 2 corpses were gone. Apart from the 2 black clothes on the ground, the courtyard was empty, and there was nothing else in it. Elder Qin couldn't help but feel puzzled. He couldn't figure out what Xiao Qin was up to. Why did he deliberately take off their clothes after killing them? Could it be that this Xiao Qin had some strange hobbies? Feeling a slight chill for no reason, Elder Qin subconsciously tightened his clothes. Jia Yubian also arrived very quickly. Although he was very arrogant on the phone, he still felt a sense of fear when he thought about facing Xiao Qin. Therefore he didn't dare to get too close. He only held Jia Muzin tightly in his hand, and was prepared to use him as a shield at any time. "Xiao Qin, stop hiding and quickly get out of the room." Elder Qin threatened loudly, "Otherwise I will let Jia Yubian slowly kill Jia Muzin first, then send people in and kill all the Jia family members inside." Although his tone was very tough, Elder Qin actually didn't dare to rush into the room rashly. He was afraid that Xiao Qin had installed some kind of mechanism inside, and it would easily cause him to lose people meaninglessly. After waiting for a while, just when Elder Qin was starting to get a little impatient, Xiao Qin finally walked out unhurriedly with a sloppy appearance. Xiao Qin heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Jia Muzin was unscathed and had only suffered some superficial injuries. He had been at a critical juncture of treating Jia Jinyan's injuries, so he had been delayed. Moving his eyes away from Jia Muzin, Xiao Qin raised his head and saw 7 men in black standing behind Elder Qin. Their expressions and aura were exactly the same as the 2 men in black killed by Flame of the Underworld. Although his expression didn't change, Xiao Qin's heart was numb at this time. Even if Flame of the Underworld could kill 2 more, he might not be able to deal with the remaining 5 men in black even if he relied on the Elder Heaven Ancestor's possession. What's more, there was a man in front who seemed to be the leader, who had been staring at him covetously. In addition, there was not a single person in the room behind Xiao Qin who could help. Although Jia Jinyan's injuries were no longer a problem, his vitality was greatly damaged and his body was weak. Currently, his strength had not recovered yet, so even if he forced himself to come out, he would only be a hindrance. Not to mention Jia Yuto and Jia Tuyao, their cultivations were way too low, and they were as timid as mice. They only knew how to hide in the room, and they would probably wet their pants before the fight even started. Thousands of thoughts flashed across his mind, but in fact, it only lasted for a moment. Xiao Qin yawned and said with a bored face, "Why are you looking for me? Don't you know there are wounded people in the room? You're already dozens of years old, yet you still don't know the rules. Why are you making a racket in the middle of the night? What's wrong with you?" While talking unhurriedly, Xiao Qin's mind was spinning quickly, trying to figure out a way to deal with these men in black. Xiao Qin, I thought you didn't dare to come out or ran away directly. I didn't know that you're so brave." Elder Qin crossed his arms in front of his chest, looked at Xiao Qin coldly and said scornfully, "That's all? If that's all, I'm leaving." Xiao Qin impatiently waved his hand, turned around and walked straight into the room. "Stop!" Elder Qin shouted. When Xiao Qin turned around, he said gloomily, "I didn't know that you're so young, but you do have some abilities. You actually killed 2 biohumans. But I'm sorry your good luck ends here. I can give you another chance to leave your last words. Before you die, do you have anything else to say? Oh, I do. Do you dare to fight me one-on-one? When Xiao Qin heard the word biohuman, an idea suddenly flashed in his mind, and he thought of a solution. But he just said it perfunctorily. Ah, are you scared out of your wits? This is Elder Qin from the Open Heaven sect. With such a noble identity, how could he fight one-on-one with an ant-like individual cultivator like you? Seeing that Xiao Qin didn't take the initiative to attack, Jia Yubian thought that he was scared. He was happy and swaggered forward to provoke him. Oh, it's the elder from the Open Heaven sect. Xiao Qin didn't feel surprised, but he still put on a look of sudden realization. He looked at Jia Yubian seriously and said, Turtle Whip, I was wondering why you dared to rebel so impulsively. Usually when you see me you're like a cowardly quail. Why did you suddenly become so fierce? So it's because you have the Open Heaven sect supporting you. Jia Yubian snorted coldly, stared at Xiao Qin and threatened, I advise you to quickly surrender. Maybe if Elder Qin is in a good mood he will give you up, quick. As he spoke, Jia Yubian's expression suddenly became a little confused, and his voice also became hesitant. Opposite him, Xiao Qin's eyes were shining with a strange light. It turned out that at this time Xiao Qin had directly released his mental power to Jia Yubian, intending to control him first and carry out his plan. Jia Yubian, why are you talking nonsense with him? F***. Elder Qin glared at Jia Yubian fiercely. Just as he was about to order the biohumans behind him to kill Xiao Qin, he suddenly saw a figure flash in the corner of his eyes, and then a strong wind attacked him. Due to his keen awareness of the crisis, Elder Qin twisted his body at the critical moment and barely avoided the palm wind. Elder Qin originally wanted to scold Xiao Qin for being despicable and taking the opportunity to sneak attack. However, when he turned his eyes, he saw that Xiao Qin was standing in the same place without moving, looking at him with a smile. It's not Xiao Qin's sneak attack? Then who is it? Elder Qin only felt a chill rising from his back. He immediately turned his head and suddenly saw Jia Yubian's ferocious face, waving his palm at him again. Elder Qin was so shocked that he even forgot to dodge. He pointed at Jia Yubian and shouted, Are you crazy? Stop it now. Bang! Before waiting for Elder Qin to finish speaking, Jia Yubian's palm was already on his chest. Luckily, Elder Qin used his demonic energy to protect his body in time, so he was able to resolve some of the damage. However, he was still hit by that force and took a few steps back. The blood in his lungs was churning and he could not help but cough a few times. Jia Yubian's eyes were dull, and he did not give Elder Qin any chance to breathe and he slapped him again. Xiao Qin's eyes lit up. This time Jia Yubian's palm wind was fierce and fierce. If it touched Elder Qin he would definitely die or be crippled. Unfortunately, Xiao Qin was destined to be disappointed this time. Chapter 11:26. Before Jia Yubian's palm could touch Elder Qin's chest, the figures of those black-clothed men flashed. One of them stood in front of Elder Qin and helped him take the hit. The rest of the black-clothed men simultaneously sent a palm strike towards Jia Yubian. Boom! After a loud sound, several large holes appeared on Jia Yubian's body. He was sent flying. He drew a parabola in the air and landed heavily on the ground not far away. Other than the fact that his body was covered in blood, Jia Yubian's eyeballs were about to pop out. He stared at the sky motionlessly. It was obvious that he was dead. Damn it. Fortunately, I set up a protective mechanism for these cyborgs. Otherwise, I would have died in Jia Yubian's hands today. Elder Qin stared at Jia Yubian's corpse and muttered to himself. His expression was extremely ugly. Elder Qin was puzzled by Jia Yubian's sudden betrayal. Elder Qin was a little puzzled. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out why he would attack him for no reason. Sigh, I didn't manage to kill you. What a pity. Xiao Qin shrugged his shoulders helplessly after watching the show. What? So it was you who did it? Elder Qin was stunned. His expression was one of shock. Xiao Qin was clearly standing at the same spot and did not move. How could he instruct Jia Yubian to suddenly betray him? Could it be that they had already hooked up? Forget it. The turtle whip is useless anyway. It's your turn now. If you have any last words, say them quickly. Xiao Qin laughed coldly. He once again released his mental strength and prepared to control Elder Qin's consciousness. Elder Qin's quick reflexes were once again highlighted. He immediately waved his hand at the men in black behind him. He pointed at Xiao Qin and shouted, All of you attack. Kill this little brat for me, Elder Chen's voice stopped abruptly. Elder Chen's consciousness had already been controlled by Xiao Chen. However, it was too late. The men in black had already received Elder Chen's order. They all activated their mental strength and fiercely rushed towards Xiao Chen. Holy *T. Why can't I find the control token? Xiao Chen quickly searched Elder Chen's body and his heart instantly turned cold. Initially, he had wanted to find a token on Elder Chen that could allow him to control cyborgs. Then he would give Elder Chen a taste of his own medicine. However, he had not expected to find anything. Seeing that the biohumans were about to reach him, Xiao Chen did not have time to think of other solutions. He could only withdraw his mental strength and summon his flying sword. Then he stepped on the flying sword and flew into the sky. Xiao Chen had no other choice. If the other party only had 3 or 4 people, he could let the flames of the underworld kill 2 of them first, and then think of a way to deal with the rest. But now there were 7 biohumans chasing after Xiao Chen. Even the person who had just been hit by Jia Yubian's palm was extremely active as he followed behind, wanting to kill Xiao Chen in one fell swoop. Since he could not think of a countermeasure for the time being, Xiao Chen could only dodge into the sky. After all, the space on the ground was too small. As long as the 7 of them casually set up a formation, they would be able to seal off all directions. When that time came, he would have no way to escape. Elder Chen only felt that his mind had gone blank for a moment. Then his body shook and he regained consciousness. Although he did not know what had happened just now, when he raised his head and saw Xiao Chen riding the flying sword and dodging left and right in the sky, he felt very proud of himself. Oh Xiao Chen, I didn't know that you had such a treasure. Elder Chen stared fixedly at the flying sword under Xiao Chen's feet. A look of greed flashed in his eyes. Although he was already an elder of the Awakening Heaven sect, the flying sword was still a treasure in his imagination. Licking his lips, Elder Chen ordered the biohumans again, all of you knock this kid down. But be careful, don't hit the flying sword under his feet. This treasure is mine. After the biohumans received the order, they immediately activated 10% of their power and aimed at Xiao Chen, who was flying in the air, and slapped their palms heavily. Although they did not have their own consciousness, they cooperated quite well. These people did not attack at the same time. Instead, they were automatically divided into 2 groups. When the first group's palms missed, the second group would immediately fill in. On the one hand, Xiao Chen had to control the flying sword. On the other hand, he had to divert his attention to avoid the whistling strength. He could not help but complain in his heart, but he could not think of a solution. He could only stay in the air. For a moment, he was in a difficult situation and was surrounded by danger. Master, be careful. Just as Xiao Chen dodged one of the strengths, the other 2 strengths came one after another. Seeing that Xiao Chen could no longer resist, Elder Chen, who was below, showed a look of excitement. At this time, Xiaoma suddenly drilled out of his body and rushed toward the strengths. Xiao Chen was slightly stunned and immediately took a few steps back. After seeing that Xiaoma had easily resolved the 2 palms, he immediately felt that the pressure was greatly reduced. He said happily, "Amazing Xiaoma. You have also made a contribution." And Xiaoma did not stop. He continued to shuttle back and forth in the air, blocking all the strengths that were attacking Xiao Chen. While defending, he said to Xiao Chen, "Master, can you let me kill 2 biohumans first? Leave the rest to me." With Xiaoma's help to block the attacks, Xiao Chen suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. When he heard what Xiaoma said, he could not help but be overjoyed. He immediately asked, "Huh? Do you have a way? I have just studied it. There should not be too much of a problem." Although his words were cautious, Xiaoma's tone was very confident. "Very good." Xiao Chen was about to open his mouth to let the fire of the underworld in his body take action. Suddenly he rolled his eyes and thought of something else. He quickly said, "Nethery, don't do anything for the time being. I still have some questions to ask that fool below. Wait for my orders." "Yes, master." The fire of the underworld agreed. He secretly prepared himself and waited for the order to attack at any time. After everything was settled, Xiao Chen rode the flying sword and slowly landed on the ground. He looked at Elder Chen coldly. "I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect it." Elder Chen saw that Xiao Chen had landed, so he waved his hand and asked the biohumans to stop attacking. He raised his head and squinted at the black shadow of Xiaoma in the sky. He sighed and said, "Not only do you have a treasure like a flying sword, but you also have such a magical helper. I am really starting to envy you, Xiao Chen. Comparisons are odious. You don't have this kind of ability. It is only right that you look up to me." Xiao Chen sneered coldly. Elder Qin did not seem to be offended by Xiao Chen's sarcasm. He asked with a smile, "In that case, why don't we make a deal? Give me the flying sword under your feet and tell me where you got that black fog from. Then I will spare your life." Of course, Elder Qin would not be so kind. Xiao Chen was a disaster. He had to be killed. Chapter 11:27. However, since he now had the upper hand, Elder Qin did not mind spending more time to figure out how to use the treasures in Xiao Chen's hands. After he had squeezed out all the remaining value from Xiao Chen, he would kill him directly. "Oh, can you really spare my life and not kill me?" Xiao Chen seemed to be quite tempted and confirmed again. "Of course, a man of his word cannot be taken back. If I say I won't kill you, I definitely won't kill you." Elder Chen was secretly delighted. He thought to himself that young people were indeed impatient and fell into the trap so quickly. Xiao Chen pondered for a long time and seemed to have finally made a decision. He slapped the table and said, "All right. It just so happens that I have some questions to ask you." "What questions?" Elder Chen was overjoyed that he could obtain the treasures. When he heard the second half of Xiao Chen's sentence, he could not help but ask subconsciously. Xiao Chen smacked his lips and pointed at the black-clothed man. "I have to say, these biohumans are indeed quite powerful. However, I am a little puzzled. You don't seem to have a token to control them, but they can all listen to your orders. What is going on?" "Token? You actually know about the token?" Elder Chen was slightly stunned at first, but he quickly reacted. Perhaps Xiao Chen had seen another type of test subject before, so he knew about the existence of the token. Seeing that Xiao Chen nodded calmly and had a thirsty look on his face, Elder Chen did not put up too much of a guard against this guy who was about to die. He explained calmly, "These are all high-level biohumans. They can be controlled remotely. I can give them orders by sending signals from a distance, so they will listen to my orders." When he recalled that Jia Huoyan and Tang Tang were quite far apart, and without the token Tang Tang would be restless and do all kinds of uncontrollable actions, Xiao Chen suddenly realized. After all, it was easy to be limited by the distance when using the token to control the biohumans. For example, when he sneaked into the Jia family this time, he left all the women at the periphery and deliberately left the token to Qing Menjing and the others beside Tang Tang. He was afraid that after he left with the token, Tang Tang would go crazy inexplicably because she was too far away from the token. However, out of caution, Xiao Chen still asked, "Isn't it just a token? How advanced could it be? Don't try to fool me." "TSK, what do you know?" Elder Chen looked at Xiao Chen as if he was looking at a country bumpkin. He said with extreme disdain, "The token has an area of effect. The holder can only control it at a close distance, and there is a possibility that he or she will be in danger. Now that I don't have the token, I can continue to control them even if I am far away. Not only can you ensure your own safety, but you can also explore all kinds of secret passages." As he spoke, Elder Chen's expression suddenly changed. He realized that he had let the cat out of the bag. He immediately stopped talking and looked at Xiao Chen with a vigilant expression. Seeing his expression, Xiao Chen's mind turned quickly. This guy said that there was a secret passage? Could it be that they were going to use these biohumans to explore some dangerous places? So they had to control the actions of the biohumans when they were not present? While thinking quickly, Xiao Chen pretended that he did not understand. He asked with a puzzled expression, "The strength of the Open Heaven sect is so high. Why are you afraid of safety? Is there any secret passage in the inner martial arts world that you don't dare to enter?" "You don't need to know this." Elder Chen glanced at Xiao Chen and said impatiently, "All right, since your problem has been solved, then hand over the flying sword. And the black fog in the air, where did you get it from? Hurry up and tell me the truth." If it was not for the things in his hands, Elder Chen would not have bothered to talk nonsense with him. This brat was young, but he had a lot of treasures. "I can't remember this. You have to let me think about it first and recall it." Xiao Chen knew Elder Chen's little plan. Naturally, he would not hand over the flying sword and Xiaoma. So, he deliberately pretended to be polite and played the Tai Chi Dao. Elder Chen glared fiercely at Xiao Chen and shouted fiercely, "Hurry up! Don't think that you are safe with that thing taking the bullet for you. Believe it or not, I can still kill you in minutes." "Oh, I don't believe it." Xiao Chen laughed. He circulated his mental cultivation method and flew towards Elder Chen, sending a palm strike at him. "Brat, you are courting death." Elder Chen was fooled. He immediately retreated and shouted angrily. Xiao Chen was too lazy to pay attention to him. he directly ordered the flame of the underworld and Xiaoma, little Nethery, go and kill the 2 biohumans on the left. And Xiaoma, I will leave the other 5 to you. Yes, master. The flame of the underworld immediately drilled out of Xiao Chen's body and divided into 2 groups to attack the biohuman on the left. And Xiaoma descended from the air and rushed toward the biohuman on the right. Damn. What is this? Elder Chen was about to command the biohumans to attack Xiao Chen when he suddenly saw 2 groups of bluish-purple flames coming out of nowhere and pouncing toward the 2 biohumans on the side. The black shadow in the air also swooped down and directly drilled into the head of one of the biohumans. He was shocked. You don't need to know. You just need to know that these things don't belong to you. Xiao Chen smiled slightly and continued to approach Elder Chen step by step. Elder Chen was a little flustered and involuntarily took a few steps back. He quickly waved to the other 4 biohumans and said, "You guys quickly kill this brat." However, to Elder Chen's surprise, as soon as he finished speaking, the black shadow quickly ran out of the biohuman's head and quickly drilled into the heads of the other 4 biohumans. It was like a swimming fish, extremely fast. After the 5 biohumans were touched by the black shadow, they seemed to not hear Elder Chen's orders. Their bodies kept swaying and it didn't take long for their arms to drop. They stopped moving forward and stood in place blankly, not moving at all. The other 2 biohumans had already been engulfed by the strange flame and were burned to ashes in a breath's time. Only 2 black clothes were left behind. They fluttered in the wind for a while before gently landing on the ground. The 2 black clothes formed a beautiful contrast with the other 2 black clothes not far away. How is this possible? Seeing this scene, Elder Chen was shocked. He finally understood how the 2 biohumans had died before. Panicking, Elder Chen ordered the other cyborgs to attack Xiao Chen again. However, unlike before, the cyborgs did not react at all. They remained rooted to the ground like idiots. Elder Chen was really dumbfounded this time. However, the current situation did not allow him to think too much. As there were no biohumans to stop him, Xiao Chen immediately slammed his palm after approaching. The palm wind was like a hot knife through butter, making a whooshing sound. Chapter 11:28. In desperation, Elder Chen could only bite the bullet and wave his palm to meet the attack. Bang! The 2 of them collided with each other's palms. Elder Chen had obviously underestimated Xiao Chen's strength. In addition to the sudden change, he was caught off guard and could not resist with all his strength. He was directly blasted away. He opened his mouth in the air and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he fell heavily beside Jia Yubian's corpse. Xiao Chen only took a step back and stared at Elder Chen coldly. Even his expression did not change at all. Master, these 5 biohumans have been possessed by me. Now they are no longer controlled by the open heavenly door. You can directly order them to do anything, but it is only temporary. And Xiaoma came out of the head of the last biohuman and came in front of Xiao Chen to report respectfully. As in Xiaoma was the same as the flame of the underworld, his level had also increased with Xiao Chen's breakthrough. Now he could go back and forth to possess them. Therefore he was able to control all the mindless biohumans in a short period of time. However, it was a pity that the brains of these biohumans had been destroyed. Therefore, Xiaoma could only leave a trace of his primordial spirit's mental strength in their brains so that they could be controlled for a short period of time. When the mental strength dissipated, it would no longer have any effect. Oh, is this for real? Is it that fun? Xiao Chen's interest was piqued. He gave the cyborgs a few inexplicable commands in succession. Sure enough, they all obeyed his commands. Some were jumping around blindly, some were running around the courtyard, and some were twisting and dancing. For a moment, the courtyard was filled with demons dancing chaotically. It was a dazzling sight. Elder Chen was lying on the ground. When he saw this scene, his face could not help but turn pale. He could not figure out how the biohumans that his sect had painstakingly developed could be controlled by Xiao Chen in just a few breaths. What kind of monster was he? Xiao Chen controlled the biohumans to play around for a while before he remembered something. He asked Xiaoma curiously with his divine sense, "This thing is quite interesting. However, you said that I can only control it for a while? What will happen if my control over them fails? Will they be controlled by the open heavenly door again?" "I won't." And little demon was very proud of his masterpiece. "I have completely cut off their connection with open heaven gate. Now their brains have been destroyed. It won't be long before my trace of spiritual power dissipates. They will become fools. Although they still have good strength, they can only stand there in a daze." "Oh, I see. Well done. Xiao Qin praised him from the bottom of his heart. Then, he ordered the group of biohumans to follow him and come before Elder Qin in a grandiose manner. Elder Qin looked at all the biohumans who had been listening to his orders just now. Now they were standing beside Xiao Qin and looking down at him. Cold sweat rolled down his back and for a moment his legs were so weak that he could not even get up. Xiao Qin looked down at him from above and said unhurriedly, Elder Qin, it's really been hard on you. You've sent me so many test subjects. I won't say anything unnecessary. Now I want to ask you some questions. You better answer them honestly, otherwise. Xiao Qin did not finish his sentence. Instead, he raised his eyebrows and made an expression that said, You know what I mean, don't hit me. I had no choice. If it wasn't for the sect asking me to come, I wouldn't want to get involved in this mess. I don't have a good impression of Jianghu. I was just forced by the order. Elder Qin had no choice but to beg for mercy in a low voice. Looking at the biohumans, who were originally controlled by the open heavenly door, all turned around and stared at him with pressure. Elder Qin felt quite upset. Stop talking nonsense. As far as I know, the open heavenly door has developed a potion that can control other people's thoughts. I believe you should be very clear about this matter, right? Xiao Qin looked at Elder Qin with narrowed eyes and asked coldly. I know. Elder Qin subconsciously glanced at the biohumans and thought to himself, isn't that the species before these biohumans? First, they were controlled by the potion, then commanded by the token. They were the first generation of biohumans. Very good. Do you have the antidote for this potion? Do you have it with you? Hurry up and hand it over. Xiao Qin bent down and glared at Elder Qin as he asked fiercely. I know about the antidote. However, those potions are kept in the sect's laboratory and are strictly guarded. Without sect leader Situ's order, no one dares to use them on their own, let alone bring them with them. Elder Qin explained with a bitter face. Although he didn't know what Xiao Qin wanted the antidote for, he didn't dare to ask. He could only answer honestly, feeling uneasy in his heart. If that's the case, then aren't you worthless? Xiao Qin straightened his body and raised his eyebrows. He was prepared to command the biohumans to kill Elder Qin. When Elder Qin heard what Xiao Qin said, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. He thought to himself that his life was over. He didn't plan to put up any meaningless resistance, so he closed his eyes tightly and waited for the next attack. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Elder Qin's heart was in his throat for a long time, but he didn't see the whooshing sound of the palm strike. He couldn't help but open his eyes in astonishment, only to see Xiao Qin looking at him with a complicated expression. It turned out that before he gave the order, Xiao Qin suddenly thought of Miss Xing. He remembered that this fellow had said that he was only following the sect's instructions. Wasn't that the same as Miss Xing? When he thought of this, Xiao Qin couldn't help but feel sympathetic. He was silent for a while, then simply waved his hand and said, Hurry up and get lost before I change my mind. Don't let me see you again. After saying this, Xiao Qin didn't bother with Elder Qin anymore. Instead, he went to untie Jianghu, then brought him back to the room and closed the door with a bang. The control time of the biohumans had also ended. At this moment, they were standing foolishly on the spot, no longer listening to Xiao Qin's instructions. Elder Qin stared blankly at the tightly shut door. Just now, he thought that this fellow was going to kill him. However, when he heard the latter part of the sentence, he was stunned. What was going on? Wasn't Xiao Qin too unfathomable? It was simply too strange. Although he was confused, Elder Qin still crawled up with a grunt. He didn't give up and tried to give orders to the biohumans that were standing still. After trying a few times, he confirmed that they were really useless. He could only sigh helplessly and choose to give up. Seeing that the door to Jianghu's room was still tightly shut and silent, Elder Qin prepared to leave the Jia clan and return to Qitian sect as soon as possible. When he walked to the side of Jianghu's corpse, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He muttered to himself for a moment, looked around and saw that there was no one around. Then he secretly carried Jianghu's corpse and brought it back with him. When Jianghu entered the room, he saw Jia Jinyan sitting on the sofa with his eyes closed. Although he didn't look too good, he was still in good spirits. Chapter 1129. Jianghu hurriedly walked over and asked about his well-being. Grandpa, I'm back. I heard from Xiao Qin that he had just given you a massage. How are you feeling now? I'm fine. This time, thanks to little friend Xiao Qin's help, otherwise the foundation established by the ancestors of the Jia family would have been destroyed. Jia Jinyan sighed and cast a grateful look at Xiao Chen, but he felt very upset in his heart. Jia Yubian was so blatantly colluding with Awakened Sect. It was obvious that they had cooperated before. It was a pity that he didn't know anything and trusted him. He was really too muddle-headed. No need to thank me. Jiang Yuzhen is my friend. Since he asked me, I will definitely help him to the end, Xiao Chen said lightly. Jia Jinyan's injury had not yet healed, but he had heard the movement outside the room. He nodded and asked, has that disobedient son who betrayed the family been executed? Yes, Grandpa. Jia Yubian is dead. Among the helpers he invited, except for Elder Qin of Awakened Sect, most of them were killed by Xiao Chen. Jiang Yuzhen answered simply. He felt that his grandfather should understand Xiao Chen's means, so he didn't explain much. Jia Jinyan nodded slightly and didn't speak. Jia Yuto couldn't help but angrily criticize, Xiao Chen. It's not that I want to blame you, but how could you let that Elder Qin go so easily? This kind of person should be arrested and tortured. Then, call the people of Awakened Sect to the Jia family and confront us face to face. Let's see how they will deny it. He had been standing by the window and peeping, so Jia Yuto clearly saw that Xiao Chen let Elder Qin go. He was very puzzled as to why Xiao Chen would do this. At this time he couldn't help but ask. You talk too much nonsense. Why weren't you so active when Jia Yubian brought people to injure Grandpa? Jia Yuzhen angrily glared at Jia Yuto, then turned to Xiao Chen and said, Xiao Chen, ignore him. Previously he was threatened by Jia Yubian, and he was so scared that he forgot his surname. What a good-for-nothing. Jia Yuzhen's disgust towards Jia Yuto was not any less than Jia Yubian's. When Jia Yubian was rebelling and arresting people, this guy saw the people from Awakening Heaven Sect and was immediately scared to the point that his legs went soft. He immediately flattered Jia Yubian, and his flattering appearance made Jia Jinyan unbearably angry. If Jia Yubian didn't bother to pay attention to him, Jia Yuto might have already stood on Jia Yubian's side and attacked the family. Therefore, Jia Yubian hated Jia Yubian very much and was not polite when he talked to him. Oh, it's nothing. After listening to the trash talk, I should go out and clean up the trash. Eldest Miss and the others are still hiding in the jungle. Jia, Xiao Chen said Yun and Jia and said Xiao and Jia Xiao comma I. Xiao Chen stretched his back and ignored Jia Yuto's furious gaze. He greeted Jia Jinyan and walked into the courtyard. Who are you calling trash? Looking at Xiao Chen's swaggering back, Jia Yuto was about to go crazy. He didn't expect that he would be ridiculed by Xiao Chen for no reason just because he raised a reasonable question. But he couldn't do anything to him, so he could only glare and sulk. Jia Yuzhen promised Xiao Chen and was about to leave when Jia Yuto suddenly found a target to vent his anger on. He frowned and said, Yuzhen, you're too outrageous. In any case, I am your elder. How can you use this kind of attitude to speak to me? Do you still have any concept of seniority? Alright, that's enough. Without waiting for Jia Yuzhen to refute, Jia Jinyan heavily slammed the table and stopped the two from arguing. Jia Yuzhen could only roll his eyes at Jia Yuto with a look of disapproval. Jia Yuto's old face turned red, but he couldn't speak and could only pant. Jia Jinyan didn't care too much and directly ordered, Yuzhen, take a few people and tidy up the courtyard in this room. After all, Xiao Chen is our Jia family's benefactor. We can't let him do this kind of rough work. Oh right, get someone to take out the best quality bird's nest and cook a sumptuous supper for Xiao Chen's friends to eat when they come back. Don't let them starve. Yes, Grandpa, I'll do it now. Jia Yuzhen immediately agreed. He gave a few instructions to the servants beside him and then led them out. Looking at Jia Yuto glaring at Jia Yuzhen's back with an exasperated expression, Jia Jinyan slightly shook his head. He only had 3 sons in his life. The eldest son colluded with outsiders in an attempt to rebel. The second son was a fence-sitter. The third son died for no reason. Alas, he didn't know what kind of sins he had committed in his previous life. If it wasn't for the fact that he had a grandson, Jia Yuzhen, who could be considered intelligent and had a wide network of friends, saving the Jia family from a crisis at a critical time, he would really be angered to death by these people. Yuto, bring some people here and tidy up the house. Throw away those things that are smashed or can't be used, and replace all the things that should be replaced. Otherwise, when the guests come later, they will laugh at us. Jia Jinyan sighed and ordered. Understood, father. Jia Yuto nodded. Although he was a little dissatisfied with Xiao Chen and Jia Yuzhen, he didn't dare to disobey his father's order. He could only busy himself with the arrangements. Jia Jinyan propped himself up and said to Jia Tuyao, who was beside him, Tuyao, help me back. When Xiao Chen and the others come back, they will still need to rest in this room. It's better not to disturb them. Okay, Grandpa, take care. Jia Tuyao responded as well. While holding Jia Jinyan's arm, they slowly walked towards the outside. His thoughts were the same as Jia Yudo's. Even if he was dissatisfied, he absolutely didn't dare to say it at this time. Wouldn't that be equivalent to asking for trouble? After Xiaoqun went out, he first led those silly biohumans to the dungeon and locked them up. He planned to use them for research in the future. After everything was done, he drove his flying sword to bring Qing Minjing and the others back. Just like that, Xiaoqun was busy until midnight. Only then did he bring Qing Minjing and the others back. Although the women didn't use their fists and legs, they had been worried about Xiaoqun's safety. Now that they knew that everything was safe and sound, they were finally relieved. Once they relaxed, they were a little tired. They casually ate a few mouthfuls of supper, lay on the bed and fell asleep without even changing their clothes. However, Xiaoqun didn't dare to sleep directly. Instead, he released his divine sense to monitor the movements around the Jia family. Firstly, he was worried that after Elder Chen went back to report, the people of Awakening Heaven sect would not be satisfied, and once again gather the biohumans to retaliate. Chapter 1130. Secondly, he was worried about Tang Tang, who was a ticking time bomb. Xiaoqun was afraid that after he fell asleep, she would lose control and do something strange again. So, he simply stayed by her side and cultivated to recover his primordial qi. As the dust settled on Xiaoqun's side, Xing was in a state of confusion. It had been 2 days since they returned to Qi Tian sect. Xing had been in a state of indecision. She even regretted it a little. Why did she agree to Xiaoqun's request so easily? Was it because she really liked Xiaoqun? That's impossible. What's so good about Xiaoqun? He's always thinking of tricks to tease me. Although he's very strong and handsome, but, oh my god. What the hell am I thinking? I don't care about helping that stinky Xiaoqun. He actually asked me to get such a dangerous thing. If I don't go, what can you do? Xing mumbled to herself as if she was trying to cheer herself up. At this moment, she was sitting in a pavilion in the garden. Feeling depressed and annoyed, she angrily threw her new phone on the table. However, she quickly picked it up and looked at it carefully. When she found that it wasn't broken, she heaved a sigh of relief. After her previous phone was broken, little chick Xing hadn't bought a new one. She had just gotten this new Apple Rose Gold phone yesterday, and she had successfully bought it through a special channel. Therefore she treasured it very much. Not only did she ask the seller to paste a gorgeous diamond on the phone, but she also specially chose a very cute phone case. Little Xing, who are you talking to? Elder Sun walked over and happened to hear Xing mumbling to herself. He couldn't help but look at her in confusion. No, I'm not talking. Xing was startled. She quickly stood up and replied in a slightly flustered manner. Elder Sun looked at her doubtfully. Then he looked at the diamond pasted on the phone and the cute cartoon case. He frowned slightly and said, "You got the new phone? Then hurry up and get ready. Tomorrow we will go to the Jia family again and continue to monitor Xiaoqun's movements." You still wanted to go to the Jia clan? What excuse should I use to get close to Xiaoqun this time? He's a little suspicious and often hides in his room mysteriously. I have no way of approaching him. Little Miss Xing was startled and said with a bitter face. She had thought that she didn't have to work undercover around Xiaoqun anymore. She didn't expect that the task would come immediately. Helpless, she could only casually make up a lie in an attempt to make Elder Sun retract his order. Think of a way yourself. Why don't you just tell him that you found a way to remove the poison in her body, and then lead him to a dangerous place, and then you can observe him in secret, said Elder Sun impatiently. But, if he is really in danger, does he still need me to protect him? If I keep coming and going like this, he will definitely be suspicious of me. Maybe he won't even go. Miss Xing lowered her head and stammered. She thought to herself, Xiaoqun's current strength is so powerful that I don't have the ability to protect him even if I wanted to. Elder Sun also had a headache. He shook his head and said, "There's no other way. Elder Chen's sneak attack on the Jia family has failed. It's that Xiaoqun's doing again. This fellow is really too troublesome. However, the sect leader doesn't allow me to kill him directly. Now that the Jia family's line of communication has been cut off, we have to think of another way." What? How could this be? Little Miss Xing suddenly raised her head and exclaimed, "Didn't Elder Chen bring many experts with him? How could they fail? That Xiaoqun is actually so powerful. What if I fail to frame him and get myself killed instead? Wouldn't I suffer a great loss? Lady Xing did not know the inside story of this sneak attack. She also did not know that the people she had brought along were all cyborgs. She only heard that the people following Elder Chen were all venerable experts. Previously, she had been secretly worried for Xiao Chen and Tian Suruan. Therefore, when she heard this news, she could not help but be shocked. What do you mean by a loss? Do you still think that this is a business transaction? Elder Sun looked at little Miss Xing with a strange expression and said in a cold tone, Little Xing, I realized that ever since you followed Xiao Chen, you seem to have become more and more strange. Not only did you not follow the orders of your superiors, you also became more and more impudent when speaking to me. Do you still remember your status? I'm sorry, Elder Sun. Little Miss Xing felt the coldness in Elder Sun's voice and instantly trembled in fear. She hurriedly apologized. In fact, even she didn't realize that her originally cold and emotionless personality was slowly changing as she continued to interact with Xiao Chen. The stiff puppet that only knew how to listen to orders had gradually become an ordinary girl that was filled with all kinds of emotions. Forget it, I won't punish you this time. Quickly go back to your room and pack up. We will leave tomorrow morning. Elder Sun coldly snorted and glanced at little Miss Xing thoughtfully. After coldly instructing her, he flicked his sleeves and left. After waiting for Elder Sun to leave, little Miss Xing let out a sigh of relief. She took her new phone and walked back to her room. Her mind was filled with random thoughts. After seeing Xiao Chen, how should I report to him? If he knew that I didn't manage to steal the information, would he kill me in a fit of anger? But even if I really steal the information, the risk is too great. If I'm discovered, it's very likely that I'll be detained. At that time, will I become like Tang Tang? Will I also be forcefully injected with the experimental drug? Will I become a puppet that has no consciousness other than killing people? What's the difference between me and a dead person? It seems that no matter what, I'm going to die this time. What should I do? What should I do? That night, a black shadow quietly snuck into the Qitian Sex Research Institute. The figure easily avoided all kinds of surveillance equipment and guards. Very smoothly he arrived at a room. He took out his phone and deftly turned on the flashlight function. Although the light of the flashlight wasn't very strong, it was still able to illuminate the surroundings of the room. At the same time, it also illuminated the face of the person in black. Impressively, it was little Miss Xing. For the entire afternoon and night, little Miss Xing struggled in her room for a long time. After repeatedly weighing the pros and cons, she finally made up her mind to help Xiao Chen steal the information. In any case, the risk of stealing the information was relatively small. Moreover, during her afternoon thinking, she suddenly thought of a good way. This way could ensure that even if she was discovered and caught, she wouldn't be punished too heavily. But if she didn't steal the information and directly went to find Xiao Chen, it would mean that she was going back on her previous promise to him. Chapter 1131. Xing had always felt that Xiao Chen's temper was hard to understand. If he found out, who knew what he would do? Furthermore, she couldn't bear to watch him every time. Furthermore, this was something she had personally promised him. If she didn't do it, she would feel as if she owed him a huge favor. After all, Xiao Chen had saved her life more than once. Xing remembered it in her heart. She had always wanted to find an opportunity to repay him. Since Xiao Chen needed her help, she couldn't let him down, right? After thinking for a long time, Xing finally decided to wait until the dead of night. Then she would steal some information from the laboratory and bring it to Xiao Chen. After rummaging around for a while, Xing finally found information related to the experimental drug. When she saw the words "control reagent" on the cover, she suppressed the excitement in her heart and flipped through a few pages. After confirming the contents, she returned the laboratory to its original state. Then she took the information and phone and prepared to leave the laboratory. Little Xing, what are you doing in the laboratory? Xing had just stepped out of the room and was about to carefully close the door when Elder Sun's cold voice suddenly came from behind her. Xing was so scared that she trembled. She almost threw her phone and the information on the ground. I'm asking you a question. What are you doing in the laboratory? What is that thing in your hand? Elder Sun opened his mouth again and asked word by word. Little Miss Xing made a prompt decision. She stiffly turned around and stared blankly at Elder Sun and his subordinates. Then, without saying a word, she mechanically walked past them. From the looks of it, she was a mindless cyborg. Stop her. Don't let her get away. Elder Sun stared blankly at Xing as she walked past. He was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He hurriedly shouted and chased after her with his subordinates. Xing's figure was rigid, but her strides were large. In a short while she had already walked quite a distance. She turned a deaf ear to Elder Sun's shouts. Elder Sun didn't expect Xing to be so arrogant. After he finally caught up with her, he blocked her way and angrily shouted, "Little Xing, don't you know that trespassing into the laboratory is a capital offense? And you actually dared to steal the research materials from the laboratory. What are you trying to do?" It turned out that when Elder Sun gave the order to Xing Bingyao in the afternoon, he felt that her actions were a little strange. So after he left, he sent someone to secretly monitor her every move. In the middle of the night, Elder Sun had just fallen asleep when his subordinates ran over to report that little Miss Xing had snuck into the laboratory and was currently stealing information. Elder Sun finally confirmed his suspicions and hurriedly brought his men over. Little girl Xing remained silent as if she didn't see Elder Sun and his group. Her eyes were blank as she continued to walk forward. Her hand tightly held onto the research document. In fact, this little girl's heart was about to jump out of her throat. When she was thinking about the plan of action at night, she had a flash of inspiration and just happened to think of this trick, pretending to be controlled. If he wasn't discovered when he was stealing the data, then everything would be fine. If he was discovered, then he would act like a robot and deliberately pretend that his mind was controlled by someone, and that was why he was stealing the research data. This trick was also inspired by Tang Tang. She had carefully observed Tang Tang's movements and behavior, and she had learned it very well. Although she didn't know if she could get away with it, she couldn't think of a better way at the moment. So this was the only thing she could do. "You're still pretending to be dumb?" Elder Sun didn't think too much about it. He thought that Xing Bingyao was just pretending. Suddenly he felt that his dignity had been seriously challenged. His lungs were about to explode. He immediately signaled his men behind him, "Everyone go! Capture her and lock her in a cell. I want to see how long she can pretend for." "Yes, sir." Several venerable masters immediately nodded. They rushed forward and quickly restrained Xing Bingyao. At the same time, they took away the phone and the research document from her hand. Xing Bingyao first symbolically struggled a few times, but she still couldn't resist the strength of the venerable masters. Only when her hands and feet were tied with rope did she quietly stand still. However, she still had a blank expression on her face. Even when her things were taken away, she didn't show any signs of anxiousness. After angrily bringing Xing Bingyao to the interrogation room, Elder Sun used both carrot and stick on her. He tempted, threatened, and intimidated her. He used all the tricks he could think of. However, Xing Bingyao still didn't say a word. She still had that confused look on her face. She stared blankly at Elder Sun's face as if there was a flower on his face. After asking for more than an hour, Elder Sun still got nothing. In the end, he was so angry that he rolled up his sleeves and prepared to torture Xing Bingyao personally. It was called torture, but in fact it was just using a whip dipped in salt water to whip Xing Bingyao a few times. However, Elder Sun didn't dare to be too harsh, and he didn't dare to use his demonic energy. If he accidentally killed Xing Bingyao, then he wouldn't be able to get anything out of her. It would also be a waste of a cultivator talent. If it was an ordinary person being whipped by this kind of whip dipped in salt water, they might have already died from the pain. However, for a cultivator, especially a Demon King Great Perfection powerhouse like Xing Bingyao, she might not be crushed to death even if she was placed under the wheels of a car, let alone being whipped. What's more, Elder Sun didn't even dare to use his demonic energy. The pain on this superficial wound was just a piece of cake for Xing Bingyao. She wouldn't even move her eyes, let alone confess. For this point, Elder Sun was naturally very clear in his heart, but apart from this method, he couldn't think of other torture methods. He could only treat it as a way to vent his anger. He whipped her a few more times, then he sat on the chair and sulked. After staring at Xing Bingyao fiercely for a while, Elder Sun lowered his head and his eyes fell on the fancy and cute mobile phone and a pile of research materials on the table. Elder Sun suddenly stared at the mobile phone and thought for a while. This kind of experimental potion has only been used by a few people. Among these people, only Tang Tang has contact with Xiao Qian. Could it be that Xing Gongzi was instructed by Xiao Qian to steal this information? Thinking of this, Elder Sun suddenly had an idea. He picked up Xing Bingyao's mobile phone and planned to check if there were any phone calls or text messages between her and Xiao Qian. Chapter 1132. However, Elder Sun didn't expect that little Miss Xing's phone was locked with a fingerprint and password. He tried a few sets of passwords but they were all wrong. He could only place the phone on little Miss Xing's finger and unlock the screen. He was too lazy to walk back, so he stood in front of little Miss Xing and started flipping through the communication records. Little Miss Xing looked down and saw Elder Sun looking down at his phone. She couldn't help but rejoice in her heart. Luckily, she didn't contact Xiao Chen after buying the new phone. There was no trace of him in the phone. Elder Sun was going to be disappointed. As expected, after flipping through the phone for a long time, Elder Sun's frown deepened. Why wasn't there any record in the phone? If it was really Xiao Chen's instructions, wasn't the secrecy done too well? After staring at the phone and thinking for a long time, Elder Sun's eyes suddenly lit up. He directly opened the text message function and started typing. He planned to use little Miss Xing's tone to send a message to Xiao Chen for help. Firstly, he could confirm his thoughts. Secondly, if it was really Xiao Chen who wanted the information, then he could trick him into Qitian sect. Who knows, he might even be able to lure those people out. This way, wouldn't he be killing two birds with one stone? He was really too smart. After typing the message, Elder Sun looked through it again. After confirming that there were no problems, he found Xiao Chen's number and sent it over. Then he decisively switched off the phone and sat back in his chair. He crossed his legs and smiled sinisterly as he imagined the scene of his plan succeeding and Xiao Chen walking into his trap. Seeing Elder Sun's despicable smile, little Miss Xing could faintly guess what he was using her phone for. Her originally relaxed mood became a little nervous again. There was a strange feeling of anticipation and worry in her heart. She hoped that Xiao Chen would come and save her, but she also didn't want Xiao Chen to take this risk. For a moment, thousands of thoughts ran through her mind and her mood became complicated. Even she didn't know why she was like this. In the backyard of the Jia residence, in an abandoned room, Xiao Chen was preparing to start his research on those biohumans. Suddenly, the phone in his pocket vibrated. Xiao Chen didn't think too much about it. He subconsciously took out his phone and glanced at it. He couldn't help but blurt out, "What the F***ck, isn't this ladyboy too unreliable? It's such a simple thing to steal data but she was caught doing it. Wasn't she pretty good at it when she first came to the research institute to steal data?" Looking at the message on his phone, Xiao Chen couldn't help but feel angry and amused at the same time. He originally thought that little Lady Xing was familiar with her own sect and that she was quite proficient in this skill, so she should be able to successfully steal the information. He didn't expect that she would be dragged into this. Even though he said that, Xiao Chen still immediately dialed Xing's number. It wasn't until the cold tone of the phone being turned off that Xiao Chen realized that something was wrong. Cheng Minjing and the other girls were very bored staying in the courtyard, so they were all by Xiao Chen's side to help him. When they heard what he said, they all stretched their heads and glanced at his phone. There was only a short line of words on it. Xiao Chen stealing data failed. I've been exposed. Hubby Xiao Chen, are you going to open Heavenly Gate to rescue Xing Xing? Seeing this, Tian Saoring asked with concern. She pouted and added, Sister Saoring feels that she's quite pitiful. Open Heavenly Gate is a broken place. There's no human touch at all. It seems that she's only happier when she's with us. Tian Saoring's words came from the bottom of her heart. After spending some time together, she had quite a good impression of Xing Xing. She felt that this girl didn't pretend and was very refreshing. She also communicated very harmoniously with her, so naturally she didn't want Xing Xing to suffer. Yes. Xiao Chen, why don't you go? No matter what, young Master Xing was caught because he wanted to save Tang Tang. We can't just watch him die. Cheng Minjing nodded in agreement. In fact, from the bottom of her heart, Cheng Minjing didn't want Xiao Chen to go to open Heavenly Gate. After all, that was the enemy's base camp. It was too dangerous to break in. However, if Xiao Chen really didn't go to save people, it would be somewhat morally unjustifiable. Therefore, her heart was also quite tangled. At this time, hearing Tian Saoring's words, she finally made up her mind. Well, I'll get ready and go right away. You can tell Jianghu later. But remember not to tell him the truth. Just say that I have something urgent to do and need to go out immediately, so that he won't be anxious and think too much. Xiao Chen put away his phone and warned. The women nodded in understanding. They all knew Jianghu's character. If he knew that Xiao Chen was going to open Heavenly Gate to save people, he would definitely not agree. After all, the risk factor was too high. However, although Ling Er and Ling Chenxue didn't object, they both proposed that they wanted to go with Xiao Chen to save people. Although the strength of the two women wasn't high, they didn't want to let Xiao Chen take risks alone. This kind of anxious feeling was too uncomfortable. Xiao Chen could only comfort them with kind words and appease their emotions. Although Open Heavenly Gate wasn't a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, there were too many unknown dangers. If he brought Ling Er and Ling Qianxue, it would be troublesome if he couldn't take care of them when the time came. Taking out the token to control Tang Tang, Xiao Chen was a little hesitant. He was considering whether to bring Tang Tang with him. If this trip went smoothly, he might be able to get the antidote for Tang Tang while rescuing Xing Tang. If he gave her the antidote directly, the control potion would naturally be cured. Leave the token to us for safekeeping. It's more convenient for you to move alone. Qing Minjing saw Xiao Chen's doubts. She reached out and gently took the token. She explained, otherwise if you bring Tang Tang with you, they might have other measures to capture her again. Then you'll be at a loss. Although Qing Minjing used to have some hostility towards Tang Tang, it had long disappeared with time. At this time she was also considering Tang Tang's safety. Alright, then I'll leave Tang Tang in your care. Xiao Chen felt that what the eldest miss said was reasonable, so he smiled and agreed. He tidied up a little, opened the door and walked out. The girls naturally wouldn't stay in the room. They rushed out and stood behind Xiao Chen as if they could cheer him on. Xiao Chen took out his flying sword and waved to Qing Minjing and the other girls. He smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, I will definitely come back safely and I can also bring Xing Tang back. Don't worry too much about me. Just wait for me to come back." After that, Xiao Chen jumped on the flying sword and instantly left the Jia family, flying in the direction of Qitian Gate. Watching the flying sword break through the air, Xiao Chen's figure gradually became a small black dot. Qing Minjing and the other girls looked at each other and could see the deep worry in each other's eyes. However, they had no other way. The only thing they could do was to take Tang Tang back to the courtyard and pray silently, hoping that Xiao Chen could return smoothly. Chapter 1133. In the Dungeon of Awakening Gate. Although Miss Xing hadn't eaten for 2 days and hadn't closed her eyes, she still looked energetic and radiant. Other than her lips being a little dry and peeling due to lack of water, there was no other discomfort. After all, Miss Xing had the support of the Demon King Great Perfection Cultivation. Even if she didn't eat or drink for a week, she could live well. Previously, Elder Sun had tried to interrogate her a few more times, but little Chick Xing still had a blank expression on her face. She pretended to be crazy and refused to speak no matter what. Elder Sun couldn't be bothered to stay with this blockhead any longer, so he directly returned to the sect and didn't bother with her anymore. After all, as the Elder of Awakening Gate, he still had a lot of things to do. Anyway, he had already sent a text message to Xiao Chen. He would see the results in these few days, so there was no need to continue to stay in the dungeon and accompany the silly Miss Xing in a daze. Although little girl Xing's body was safe and sound, she had stayed in the dark and gloomy prison for 2 days without anyone to accompany her. She still had to maintain her vigilance at all times and was prepared to play dumb. Her mental state was already beyond exhausted. Once she relaxed, a lot of negative thoughts would emerge in Miss Xing's mind. She felt that it was impossible for Xiao Chen to take the risk to come for her. After all, this is the base camp of Awakening Gate. Who has such courage to break into the enemy camp? If Xiao Chen doesn't come, then I will either die in the dungeon, or I will be taken by Elder Sun to experiment on some kind of biohuman, or, "Hey Mr. Ladyboy, are you thirsty? Do you want to drink some of the best mineral water I made?" On this day, Miss Xing was lowering her head and letting her imagination run wild. Suddenly she heard a familiar voice. That voice was so familiar that Miss Xing jumped in fright. She abruptly raised her head in disbelief and was instantly dumbfounded. It was indeed Xiao Chen. She saw Xiao Chen sitting leisurely on the table with his right index finger raised. There was a spinning water ball on top of it. He was looking at her with a smile. "Hey, why don't you talk? Is it because he's not thirsty?" Xiao Chen shook his head and turned to look at the water ball in his hand. He muttered to himself, "Tisk tisk, that's a pity. I can't even drink such sweet water. I'll drink it myself. We have to save water. Don't waste it." After he finished speaking, Xiao Chen moved his face closer to the side of the water ball spell and gently sucked the water in the water ball with his mouth. His throat even made gulp-gulp sounds as he swallowed. Little girl Xing involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She had not drunk any water for 2 whole days. If she did not eat, she could rely on her cultivation to get by. However, not having water to drink was something that even cultivators could not bear. At this moment, when she saw the crystal-clear water ball in Xiao Chen's hands, She naturally wanted to drink it to her heart's content. However, she also suspected that the Xiaoqin she saw was an illusion. Or could it be a trap set by Elder Sun? Since she didn't know the enemy's situation, she could only choose to pretend to be unmoved. Alright, stop pretending. Drink some water. Once you're done, I'll take you and escape. Xiaoqin had no choice but to raise the water ball spell to her mouth when he saw how pitiful Xing Air was, but she still pretended not to care. However, the originally fist-sized water ball had shrunk to the size of a ping-pong ball after Xiaoqin drank a few mouthfuls. Xiaoqin, it's really you? When little girl Xing's lips came into contact with the water ball, she instantly felt a cooling sensation. She couldn't care about pretending to be confused anymore. She hurriedly opened her mouth and swallowed the entire water ball. Then she gulped down the water in large mouthfuls. However, before she could drink a few mouthfuls, the water ball was completely exhausted. Little girl Xing was still unsatisfied and unconsciously used her tongue to lick her teeth. In the end, the tip of her tongue touched a strange thing. I say, Prince Ladyboy, your tastes are very unique. It seems that not only have you not drunk water for a long time, you haven't even eaten food. That's a little too miserable. Xiaoqin jumped in fright and hurriedly pulled his finger out. He didn't expect little girl Xing to be so fierce. She actually put his finger in her mouth and subconsciously licked it a few times. This action was a little too ambiguous. Pay. Who wants to eat your finger? You're simply too unhygienic. That's right, have you trimmed your nails? What if there are germs? Will you infect me? Little girl Xing finally realized what she had licked and jumped in fright. She hurriedly spat a few times and angrily retorted. Thinking back to her previous expression of enjoyment, little girl Xing's face instantly turned red. Originally, she thought that the Xiaoqin in front of her was someone else in disguise. However, when she touched the unmistakably real water ball technique and heard Xiaoqin's infuriating words, she immediately confirmed that this was definitely Xiaoqin. After all, only Xiaoqin would make such an unimaginable water ball technique. Only he would have such a venomous tongue. He was clearly here to save her, yet he could make her so angry that she was grinding her teeth. You still have the nerve to talk about me? Xiaoqin curled his lips and mercilessly exposed her. Who was the one who didn't get tired of it and even blindly licked with his tongue? To think that I was so worried about your safety and rushed over at top speed. I even accidentally got a few speeding tickets. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have come to save you. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. Although he was complaining, Xiaoqin's hands did not hesitate as he quickly removed the shackles on little girl Xing's hands and feet. Then he very naturally stretched out his hand to take her pulse. After confirming that her body was fine, he finally relaxed. Fast your head. Do you think you're still in the secular world? Wake up, okay. Little girl Xing rolled her eyes in annoyance. However, she was still a little touched by Xiaoqin's thoughtfulness in taking her pulse after saving her. In order to hide this emotion, she changed the topic and asked, "That's right, how did you know that I was locked up here? Also, how did you get in? When we were outside the open heaven gate, didn't you say that there was a place with lax security? I came in from there. As for how I knew where you were, you don't have to worry about that." Xiaoqin shrugged his shoulders and gave a simple explanation. Little girl Xing nodded. Her shackles were released and she began to move her wrists. Then, she bent down to massage her ankles, unintentionally revealing a large patch of snow-white skin on her back. Previously, when Xiaoqin was helping little girl Xing remove her shackles, he had noticed that the clothes on her back seemed to be torn. At that time he was a little puzzled. Now that little girl Xing bent down, Xiaoqin's gaze naturally landed on her back. Chapter 1134. He saw that on Miss Xing's snow-white back, there were many ghastly scars. Her flesh was twisted and blood-stained. It was obvious that she had been whipped recently, causing her perfect back to become a complete mess. Xiaoqin's expression changed when he saw this scene. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes. His tone immediately turned cold as he asked, "Xing Gongzi, what happened to your back? Who whipped you? What injury?" Xing Gongzi was stunned. She straightened her body and touched her back. Only then did she know what Xiaoqin was talking about. She waved her hand carelessly and said, "Oh, didn't I help you steal research materials a few days ago? In the end, I was caught by Elder Sunday. Fortunately, I was smart enough to pretend that my mind was being controlled by someone and became like Tang Tang. That's how I was spared." Spared? Xiaoqin's brows furrowed tightly. He looked at Xing Gongzi pulling up the clothes on her back and asked with dissatisfaction, "There are so many wounds on your back. How can you be considered spared? Who did this to him?" Xing Gongzi smiled and explained, These injuries were caused by Elder Sunday. But it's not a big deal. It's not like I hurt my muscles or bones. It's fine. When I was cultivating in the past, the injuries I suffered were much more serious than this." Elder Sun, right? Xiao Chen's tone was gloomy. "I've long wanted to meet him. He even dared to be so heavy-handed with my people. His position as an elder has come to an end." Xiao Chen didn't get angry. Instead he smiled. But that smile revealed a cold, murderous intent. Xing Gongzi couldn't help but shiver. Seeing Xiao Chen like this, Xing Gongzi didn't feel at ease. Instead, she frowned and was a little worried. After all, there were many masters in Qitian Gate. She was afraid that Xiao Chen would impulsively go find Elder Sunday. Now that they were finally freed, it would be really hard to escape if they were caught again. Therefore, Xing Gongzi didn't mind Xiao Chen saying that she was his person. Instead, she pulled him and hurriedly said, "Forget it, Xiao Chen. This little bit of pain is nothing to me. Think about my cultivation. This little bit of skin wound can't hurt me at all. Let's leave Qitian Gate first. Who knows when Elder Sun and the others will come back?" "It's fine. I'll send you to a safe place first before coming back to teach Elder Sun a lesson." Xiao Chen's tone softened. He casually took off his jacket and draped it over Xing's body. Then he helped her out of the dungeon. Xing Gongzi knew that Xiao Chen was helping her cover the wound on her back and her torn clothes. She couldn't help but feel a burst of warmth in her heart. She tightened the jacket on her body and wanted to say a few more words to persuade Xiao Chen. Unexpectedly, just as she walked out of the dungeon, she saw Elder Sun and a middle-aged man walking shoulder to shoulder in the direction of the dungeon. There were even a few venerable experts following behind them. They were the people who had captured her earlier. Xing Gongzi was shocked and immediately returned to her original state. She started to act dumb and stared blankly into the distance. At this time, Elder Sun also saw the movement in front of the dungeon. He saw Xiao Chen supporting Xing Gongzi and preparing to sneakily escape. He was stunned for a moment before shouting, "Damn! Xiao Xing, you traitorous disciple. You really have something going on with Xiao Chen. I finally caught you red-handed. You have nothing to say, right? Why aren't you going to surrender?" Xing Gongzi turned a deaf ear to him and continued to walk in the direction of the escape with a blank look. Elder Sun was furious and immediately ordered his subordinates behind him, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and attack. Capture both of them." The few honorable experts exchanged glances and immediately used their movement techniques to rush over. They surrounded Xiao Chen and Xing Gongzi in the middle. Then they circulated their mental cultivation techniques and were ready to attack at any time. Seeing Xing Gongzi suddenly turn into a blank look, Xiao Chen immediately understood the reason. His face darkened and he angrily said, "Looks like you are Elder Sun? What a coincidence, I was just about to look for you. Since you're here, there's no need for you to leave." "You overestimate yourself. I should be the one saying that to you." Elder Sun walked over and coldly snorted, "Do you think that after killing a few useless biohumans, you have enough strength to fight against the open heavenly gate? Today, I'll make sure that you won't be able to leave alive." After saying that, Elder Sun did not wait for Xiao Chen to make his move. He turned around and ordered his subordinates, "Xiao Chen is full of tricks. Don't show any mercy. All of you attack. Don't give him any chance to attack." "Yes, sir." Since Elder Sun had spoken, the honorable experts naturally would not show any mercy. In an instant, they raised the demonic chi in their bodies to the maximum. Then they waved their palms and slapped toward Xiao Chen. The air was suddenly filled with a suffocating and thick killing intent. TSK, I realize that you people are even more stupid than the biohumans. Do you really think that I'm a weakling that you can kill as you please?" As Xiao Chen mocked them, he immediately circulated his mental cultivation techniques. He took out his flying sword and infused it with his divine sense and mental strength. He waved his sword and shouted loudly, "So what if you're honorable experts? All of you can go to hell." Unsheath. The middle-aged man who came with Elder Sun had not spoken before. He just watched from the side. When Xiao Chen was surrounded, he only raised his eyebrows and did not look proud. Because he knew that since this kid dared to come alone, he must have come prepared. It was just that he did not know what Xiao Chen's ultimate move was. When Xiao Chen mocked Elder Sun, the middle-aged man's ominous premonition became stronger. When he saw the flying sword break through the air, he finally felt that the situation was not good. He could not help but shout, "Danger! Be careful! Get out of the way!" Whoosh. Although the middle-aged man's shout was considered timely, the honorable expert's reaction speed was still a step too slow. The flying sword in the air split into two, then two into four. In a flash, it transformed into the same number of honorable experts. Those flying swords stopped in the air for a short while. All of them drew a strange arc in the air and went straight for the heads of the surrounding honorable experts. Those honorable experts did not understand what was going on. They saw a strong light flash in front of them, and then a large hole was pierced through their heads. They were even sent flying by a strong force. They did not even have the chance to scream. When they landed on the ground, they were all dead. What? This is... Elder Sun's mouth was wide open in horror. He looked at the lifeless honorable experts on the ground in disbelief. His back was drenched in cold sweat and his heart felt incomparably cold. Chapter 1135. Although Elder Sun had heard about the flying sword from Elder Qin before, he only thought that it was a tool for Xiao Qin to fly. He never expected Xiao Qian's flying sword to be so powerful. Not only could he fly on a sword, but he could also use it to kill so many venerable realm masters. This was too heaven-defying. Xiao Qin raised his sword finger and twirled it in the air. He gathered all the flying swords back together and merged them into one flying sword. He put it back in his hand and turned around to look at Elder Sun's expression. He sneered coldly, "What's the point of opening your mouth so wide? Do you want to experience the feeling of a flying sword piercing through your throat?" Elder Sun's entire body trembled, and he immediately closed his mouth. Because he closed his mouth too quickly, the sound of bones cracking could be heard, and he almost dislocated. Xiao Qin didn't look at him. Instead, he lowered his head and admired his flying sword. He said calmly, "What do you think? My new ultimate technique is powerful, right? Do you want to find some venerable realm masters to test it out on me?" Actually, Xiao Qian's divide and strike technique was inspired by the fire of the underworld. In addition, he had seen some cartoons in the past. Then he came up with it on his way to the open heavenly gate. After coming up with this technique, he tested it repeatedly before he finally succeeded. Now that he was using it, it was indeed powerful and effective. However, this ultimate technique had its own weakness. Basically, every time it was used, it would consume a large amount of yuan qi and mental strength. Usually, after using it, it would require a period of time to recover. Xiao Qin originally planned to use this technique to deal with the biohumans. However, the situation was critical now, so he could only use it on normal cultivators. At least, it could save them in an emergency. Otherwise, if Xiao Qin really had to face so many venerable realm masters alone, he might not have a 100% chance of winning. Moreover, he had to split his attention to take care of Lady Xing, who was pretending to be dumb. Apart from Elder Sun and the other cultivators, the middle-aged man who warned them just now didn't look simple either. Weighing the pros and cons, Xiao Qin could only choose to unleash his ultimate move first. On the one hand, he could reduce the enemy's combat power, and on the other hand he could intimidate Elder Sun and the middle-aged man. After that, he could think of a way to escape. This sect leader Situ, do you think we should send those biohumans over to block them? Elder Sun was so frightened that he took a few steps back. He stuttered and asked for instructions. "Xiao Qin is too powerful. If this goes on, I'm afraid all the venerable experts in our sect will." Elder Sun was smart enough to not finish his discouraging words. In fact, he was also shocked by the move just now and felt that he could not resist it. He was afraid that if Xiao Qin was unhappy, he would use his flying sword to stab him to death. "Lunatic, why don't you go block the flying swords yourself?" Hearing how Elder Sun addressed him, the middle-aged man was obviously Open Heaven Sect's sect leader Sidu Qitian. He glared at Elder Sun and took a few steps forward vigilantly. He looked at Xiao Qin and said in a low voice, "Xiao Qin, I didn't expect you to have some ability. However, this doesn't mean that our Open Heaven Sect is afraid of you. How about this? Let's each take a step back this time. We'll fight openly again another day. What do you think?" Situ Qitian was not like Elder Sun, who was afraid of Xiao Qian's flying sword. It was just that he had heard from Elder Qin that Xiao Qin had other strange moves that he had not used until now. Therefore, Situ Qitian did not plan to act rashly. He wanted to figure out Xiao Qian's trump card first before making a long-term plan. "Oh, no problem. Since sect leader Situ has spoken, I have to give you face no matter what, right? Then we'll meet again." Xiao Chen nodded nonchalantly. Then he held the flying sword in one hand and held Xing's arm in the other as he walked out. However, they had only taken a few steps when they were stopped by Sidu Qitian again. Xiao Chen frowned and looked coldly at Sidu Qitian. He said indifferently, "Sect leader Situ, what do you mean by this? Are you going to swallow your words back into your stomach? As a dignified sect leader, how can you be so immoral? Don't you think you're not magnanimous enough?" "Ah, Xiao Chen, don't misunderstand. That's not what I meant." Sidu Qitian smiled faintly. He pointed at Xing Chik and said, "I just said that you can leave, but little Xing is a member of our Awakening Heaven sect. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for you to take her away so openly, right?" "What's not appropriate? Why don't I feel that way?" Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and looked at Sidu Qitian provocatively. Sidu Qitian saw that Xiao Chen's attitude was so unyielding, and his face stiffened. He said stiffly, "If you really take her away and word gets out, I, Sidu Qitian, won't have the face to mingle in the inner martial arts circle. So, I hope that you can keep her and hand her over to Open Heaven sect to deal with." "Hand her over to you for what? Is this what you mean by taking a step back?" Xiao Chen sneered. "Then I'm sorry, I don't accept your conditions. Today I must take Xing Gongzi away. If you think that you have the ability to keep us here, then you can try." Xiao Chen naturally knew that things were not so simple. He simply shed all pretense of cordiality and raised his flying sword, pointing it at Sidu Qitian. Then he slowly injected his mental strength into the sword. "Ah, good. Very good." Sidu Qitian threw his head back and laughed a few times. Without another word, he circulated his mental cultivation and displayed the strength of a perfected supremacy. He stared at Xiao Chen and said coldly, "Then all of you. Damn it, you actually cheated." Sidu Qitian was prepared to say something to boost his morale before attacking Xiao Chen. But halfway through his words, he suddenly saw Xiao Chen's fingers loosen, and a white beam of light shot straight at him. "What a joke. It's not like I'm listening to a teacher's lecture. Do I have to wait for you to finish before attacking? Do you think I'm stupid?" Xiao Chen snorted coldly, his tone filled with mockery. In fact, Xiao Chen had no choice but to attack. After all, he had used that move just now and he did not have much primordial energy left in his body. Although he did not know if he could kill Sidu Qitian in one strike, Xiao Chen still wanted to give it a try. Otherwise, the longer it dragged on, the greater the danger. Furthermore, he had to leave some mental strength to control the flying sword, so he did not use his full strength. Against Xiao Chen's attack, Sidu Qitian could only give up on attacking helplessly. Instead, he gathered all his fiendish qi in his hand and stared unblinkingly at the rapidly approaching white light, silently estimating the flying sword's speed. Just as the flying sword was about to stab into Sidu Qitian's body, he suddenly clasped his palms together. With a beautiful empty-handed blade grab, he caught the flying sword between his palms. Chapter 1136. However, it was unknown whether it was due to inertia, or Sidu Qitian had wrongly estimated Xiao Chen's strength, but the flying sword that had been blocked continued to charge forward. It only stopped when the tip of the sword pierced Sidu Qitian's forehead. The skin between Sidu Qitian's brow was also pierced, and a drop of blood instantly flowed down his nose, looking a little scary. "Oh, your reaction is quite fast. You're much stronger than those defeated soldiers under you. No wonder you can become the sect leader of Awakening Sect." Xiao Chen curled his lips. He looked calm and collected on the surface, but he secretly lamented that it was a pity. He had thought that he could kill Sidu Qitian with his flying sword, but he did not expect that Sidu Qitian would be able to catch it. This old fellow really had some ability. Sidu Qitian threw away the flying sword in his hand and wiped the blood on his forehead. His expression was very ugly. Since he had broken through to become a venerable expert, this was the first time he had been injured, and it was a sneak attack. It was simply too embarrassing. Fortunately, there was only Elder Sun beside him. Otherwise, if disciples from other sects saw this, he would lose a lot of face. "Xiao Chen, don't be too proud of yourself." Seeing Sidu Qitian's gloomy face after being injured, Elder Sun hurriedly stood up and retorted loudly, "Why don't you say that even your most powerful move was easily resolved by our sect leader Sidu? I'd like to see what kind of ability you have next, enough to let you leave Awakening Sect." As he spoke, Elder Sun lowered his head, and his eyes suddenly fell on the flying sword on the ground. His eyes suddenly lit up and he pounced forward, reaching out to snatch the flying sword. Just as Elder Sun's fingertips were about to touch the flying sword, He heard a swoosh sound, and the flying sword rose from the ground and flashed past his eyes. Elder Sun watched the flying sword return to Xiao Qian's hand, but he himself had fallen flat on his face. Xiao Qian easily used his mental strength to control the flying sword and took it back into his hand. Then he looked at Elder Sun, who had angrily climbed up and dusted himself off, and said, "Surnamed Sun, you've lived so many years, but have you been living like a dog? Aren't you a little too naive? How could I only have this move? Didn't your Elder Qin tell you that I still have many strange tricks up my sleeves?" Elder Sun and Situ Qitian were stunned. They looked at each other, and Elder Qin's horrified description appeared in their minds at the same time. Elder Qin said that not only could Xiao Qin control biohumans, but he could also control a kind of black shadow. Not only could it help him absorb damage, but it could also release bluish-purple flames that could instantly burn biohumans to ashes. As for Xiao Qin, he had not even used these moves yet. The two of them immediately felt a little guilty and did not know what to say to retaliate. When Xiao Qin saw Situ Qitian and Elder Sun's expressions suddenly turn a little grave, he immediately guessed that Elder Qin must have exaggerated when he reported. Otherwise, these two fools wouldn't have been so easily intimidated by his one sentence. "Don't think I don't know that she's an outstanding disciple of your sect. Controlling such a person is the most fulfilling thing." Xiao Qin immediately guessed that Elder Qin must have exaggerated when he reported. "Don't think I don't know that she's an outstanding disciple of your sect. Controlling such a person gives me the greatest sense of accomplishment." Xiao Qin, don't try to trick me. I won't believe you. You're just a rogue cultivator from the secular world. How could you control someone's mind without the help of any drugs? Do you really think we're 3-year-old children? Elder Sun snorted. Although he said that, he knew that Elder Qin was not lying. After all, this guy had brought 7 or 8 biohumans out and none of them returned. It was absolutely impossible to say that Xiao Qin did not have some trump cards. However, Xiao Qin said that he could control people's minds. This was complete nonsense. How could he do this without the use of drugs? Even the Awakening Gate itself had been researched for several years and experienced countless failures before it was able to produce those barely qualified experimental potions. Situ Qitian, on the other hand, did not say a word as he looked at Xiao Qin in front of him in silence. He sighed in his heart. Back then, that good-for-nothing who could not cultivate, an ant who was mercilessly suppressed in the secular world, actually had the qualifications to come to the inner martial arts world. He had even walked into the Awakening Heaven Sect's headquarters and stood in front of him. As for his painstaking efforts, would they bear fruit? The person behind Xiao Qin, when will you come out? I, Situ Qitian, don't have that much time to play with you. Oh, since you don't believe me, then I'll let you see. Xiao Qin ignored Situ Qitian's changing expression and shrugged. He directly released his divine sense to Elder Sunday. Don't joke around. Smack. Elder Sun was just about to laugh at him when he suddenly raised his left hand and slapped himself hard. Situ Qitian's thoughts were immediately interrupted as he looked at this scene dumbfounded. What was going on? Elder Sun was controlled just like that? But Xiao Qin did not even touch him. Xiao Qin leisurely retracted his divine sense and stared at Elder Sun with a cold smile. How is it? Impossible? Try saying that again? This? Elder Sun was completely dumbfounded. He subconsciously reached out and touched his face, only to feel a burning pain on his face. When he was being controlled just now, he could not do anything and could only watch his own hand hit his face heavily. He did not even have the slightest consciousness to resist. What happened? Why am I here? Little Miss Xing had seen the whole process just now and was not confused at this time. She immediately woke up when Xiao Qin was controlling Elder Sunday. She looked left and right in a daze and said in a daze, "Sect leader Situ, Elder Sun, why are you here?" So, Xiao Qin, what are you doing here? After saying that, little Miss Xing immediately took a few steps back and slightly distanced herself from Xiao Qin. She had a vigilant look on her face. It had to be said that little Miss Xing had been training and completing missions all year round. Her acting skills had already reached perfection. Even Situ Qitian and Elder Sun were fooled by her vivid performance. Xiao Qin also looked at her in a daze. For a moment, the few of them did not know what to say. Cough cough. In the end, it was Situ Qitian who reacted first. He rolled his eyes and immediately came up with a plan. He cleared his throat and attracted everyone's attention. He first looked deeply at little Miss Xing, then turned his head and said to Xiao Qin with a solemn face, "Xiao Qin, don't think that just because you know some crooked tricks, I won't dare to do anything to you. If not for the fact that the venerable mystic realm is about to open and I don't want any more losses, I would have already kept you here. Chapter 1137. Oh. Xiao Chen scratched his head, secretly praising Xing's outstanding acting skills. Just like that, she managed to fool these two idiots. Sidu Qiqian continued in a serious tone, since you like Xiao Xing so much, then take her away. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. I will settle this debt with you sooner or later. At this moment, Sidu Qiqian was still admiring his own acting skills. After seeing Xing's actions just now, he immediately deduced that Xiao Chen definitely knew this kind of mind-controlling secret technique. However, he could only control one person at a time. So, after Xiao Chen took control of Elder Sun, that chick Xing woke up. Due to Xing's realistic acting skills, Sidu Qiqian had no doubts about Xiao Chen's strength. After he finished his high-sounding speech, he immediately used telepathy and secretly told Xing that nothing big had happened just now. It was just Xiao Chen trying to save her. After explaining, Sidu Qiqian immediately ordered Xing to continue following Xiao Chen using his status as the sect master. At the same time, he secretly investigated Xiao Chen's mind-controlling secret technique, as well as that black fog and bluish-purple flame. What kind of ultimate technique was that? Hearing Sidu Qiqian's secret order, little Miss Xing nodded at him imperceptibly. Although she didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the scene in front of her, she had no other choice but to agree first. Otherwise, if this deadlock continued, she could still pretend to be a fool, but Xiao Chen might not even be able to leave the open heaven gate. No matter what, Xiao Chen was here to save her. She couldn't possibly cheat him, right? Oh, if you want revenge, I'll welcome it any time. Is there anything else now? If there's nothing else, I won't talk nonsense with you anymore. Bye-bye. Xiao Chen said casually. Then he pulled Xing onto the flying sword and infused the rest of his mental strength into it. With a swoosh sound, the flying sword immediately took the two of them away. Soon, only a small black dot was left. Seeing that the precious flying sword that was about to fall into his hands was gone, Elder Sun couldn't help but sigh. Looking at the distant black shadow, he said unwillingly, Sect Master Situ, why didn't you leave Xiao Chen behind? Don't we still have two more powerful biohumans? If we can send them out, I think. Elder Sun, I notice that you're getting more and more muddle-headed. Before Elder Sun could finish speaking, Sidu Qiqian interrupted his words and reprimanded sternly. Elder Sun was startled and quickly bowed his head respectfully. He stood there, not even daring to breathe loudly. Sidu Qiqian glared at him and said impatiently, after sending Xiao Xing out to investigate for so long, he still hasn't figured out Xiao Chen's true strength. What's more, Xiao Xing is being controlled by someone else. Fortunately, she only came back this time to steal the information. If Xiao Chen instructed her to go to the laboratory and set it on fire, wouldn't our entire Awakening Heaven sect be destroyed? This is indeed your subordinate's negligence. Elder Sun admitted his guilt in fear and trepidation. However, he was a little speechless. He thought to himself, weren't you the one who said that Xiao Chen couldn't be killed immediately? Otherwise, that last Xing would have killed him several times already. Why would she need to make such a fuss? Also, what did you just say? Biohumans? You still have the cheek to mention biohumans? Sidu Qiqian became angrier as he spoke. He glared at Elder Sun and roared. Your subordinate? Your subordinate knows his mistake. Please forgive me, Sect Master. Elder Sun shuddered and fell to his knees. Although he didn't know what had happened to the biohumans, Sect Master Sidu must have touched his reverse scale for him to be so angry. Sidu Qiqian took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. Then he said indifferently, it's not like you don't know that the Venerate secret realm is about to open. After that, that place will open as well. Where do we have the manpower to go and mess around with Xiao Chen? Elder Sun regained his composure. Only then did he realize where he had gone wrong. This was like picking up a sesame seed and throwing away a watermelon. For the sake of a flying sword, he had forgotten the most important purpose. No wonder Sect Master Situ was so angry. Sidu Qiqian sighed and shook his head. He continued, Elder Chen's action this time was not only ineffective, but we also lost so many biohumans. Of course, we have to leave the two most powerful ones to explore that place. How can we use them to deal with Xiao Chen? Isn't this a waste of talent? Yes, Sect Master Situ is right. Then we'll let Xiao Chen live for a few more days. After the sect has settled all the important matters, we'll find trouble with him. Elder Sun trembled again and said respectfully. Alright, hurry up and prepare the relevant matters. This time, we must send the most outstanding people to the Venerable Realm to ensure that everything goes smoothly. Sidu Qiqian looked in the direction where Xiao Qian and Elder Sun had disappeared and added, "As for Xiao Qian, I've already asked Xiao Xing to keep an eye on him. Don't act rashly for the time being." Yes, this subordinate understands. Sidu Qiqian touched his forehead helplessly and found that the place where Xiao Qian's flying sword had stabbed him was bleeding again. So, he gave Elder Sun a few instructions and turned to apply medicine in his room. Elder Sun waited for Sidu Qiqian to leave before he slowly stood up. His eyes were full of hatred. That damn Xiao Qian. He caused me to be scolded by the sect master. I'll definitely pay him back double in the future. On the other side, after flying on the flying sword for a few hours, Xiao Qian gradually felt a little exhausted. After observing for a while, he realized that no one was chasing after him, so he slowed down and stopped in a forest. He found a big tree and sat down to rest. At first, Miss Xing was a little puzzled. She didn't know why Xiao Qian wasn't in a hurry to return but had stopped instead. However, when she saw that Xiao Qian was sitting cross-legged on a tree branch with his eyes closed, she understood that he might have exhausted his demonic qi and couldn't fly anymore. After understanding the reason, Miss Xing didn't rush him anymore. She obediently sat beside Xiao Qian and recounted the mission that Sidu Qiqian had given her in full detail. Although Miss Xing didn't understand why she had told him everything, she felt that she shouldn't hide anything from Xiao Qian. After listening, Xiao Qian nodded his head and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Since Sidu Qiqian had chosen to let Miss Xing investigate him, it meant that before Sidu Qiqian found out his true strength, he wouldn't rashly send people to kill him again. From the looks of it, he and Miss Xing would be safe for a short period of time and could relax a little. Thinking of this, Xiao Qian let out a long sigh and let go of the worries in his heart. He deeply felt that he should bring more spirit jades with him in the future. At the very least, he could use them for emergencies. Otherwise, if he encountered a similar situation again, he wouldn't be so lucky. Chapter 1138. Just as Xiao Qian was running from place to place, there was a turbulent undercurrent in the internal martial arts world. Under the calm surface, there was an extremely ferocious undercurrent. Apart from the Jia clan, Tang clan and Yu clan as well as the Demon Sect's Awakening sect, there were two special forces in the internal martial arts world. Usually they did not seem to have any presence, but internally, they had extremely profound and unknown strength. These two forces were different from ordinary internal martial arts world clans in terms of their own cultivation methods and the items they needed for cultivation. Therefore, they usually formed their own faction and did not interact with most of the sects and clans in the internal martial arts world. However, the two forces always schemed against each other and fought for resources. Once they met, they would fight until their heads were broken and they were determined to see who was stronger. One of the forces called itself an Immortal Cultivator sect. It was formed by Song Huawu, Song Qingshu's Song clan, Hongzhu's Hong clan, and a few other less famous clans. However, they did not use the title of Immortal Cultivator sect when they interacted with the outside world. For example, the Hong clan appeared as a merchant clan, while the Song clan disguised themselves as a middle-level cultivation clan. This was to protect the secret of their Immortal Cultivator sect. As for the origin of this Immortal Cultivator sect, it was precisely because the ancestors of their clans had unintentionally mastered some unique cultivation methods that were much more exquisite than those of the martial cultivators and demonic cultivators. Therefore, this sect was formed by a few clans that had discovered the cultivation methods together. Considering that if the cultivation methods were to be spread out, it might cause other sects to fight over them, they usually kept a very low profile and only moved in a small circle. Although others knew that these clans had a close relationship, they would never think that they were actually a force. The other sect was the Ghost Cultivator sect, which corresponded to the Immortal Cultivator sect. They called themselves the Tranquil Forest sect to the outside world. These people were inextricably linked to the West Mountain in the secular world. Due to their unruly and evil behavior, they were not accepted by the world and were known as evil cultivators. Therefore they were like street rats and did not dare to be too ostentatious. In the cultivation methods left behind by their ancestors, the Immortal Cultivator sect found a place where one could advance after breaking through the Venerable Realm consummation. They called it the Immortal Cultivation World. On the other hand, the ancestors of the Tranquil Forest sect had entered the Immortal Cultivation World with the help of the treacherous and cruel cultivation methods. They left hints for their descendants, hoping that they could cultivate to the immortal cultivation world as soon as possible so that they could enter the immortal cultivation world and seek refuge with their ancestors. It was precisely because these two forces had the same goal, and they both wanted to be the first to enter the world of cultivation. Thus, they usually secretly mobilized their forces and accumulated their strength. Once they met, there would definitely be endless conflicts. No matter which side it was, they didn't want the other side to get ahead of them. Apart from these, most of the sects and clans in the martial arts world were still stuck at the stage where they were trying to break through from martial king to martial venerable. The path of the venerable was prepared for these people. These people had never thought that there would be a higher realm after the venerable realm. This problem was finally solved when Situ Chitian of the Awakening Heaven sect broke through to the 10th level of the venerable realm. After Situ Chitian reached the 10th level of the venerable realm, he vaguely felt that there was a higher level after that. However, when he tried to break through, he could not find a way. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly thought of something. If a king could use the immortal cultivation world to break through to the venerable realm, would there be a similar arcane realm that could help in breaking through to the venerable realm? Thinking of this, Situ Chitian immediately sent out all the disciples of the sect to search the immortal cultivation world. He especially focused on the venerable realm. Finally, during a search of the venerable realm, the experts of the Qi Heavenly sect found an ancient ruin near the arcane realm. Based on some vague hints left behind, they learned that there was a secret path in the ancient ruin. It could be opened with spiritual jade at any time, and they could use it to enter the immortal cultivation world. When these experts sent the news back to the Qi Heavenly sect, Situ Chitian was overjoyed. However, the news that came next made his mood drop from the peak to the bottom. It turned out that those experts were so excited that they didn't wait for Situ Chitian's next order and tried to venture into the cultivation world. In the end, after going for half a month, not a single one of them returned. The people waiting outside felt that something was wrong and finally chose to report back to the sect. Situ Chitian sent a few more groups of people of different strengths to try. The result was no exception. No one could come out after they went in. Hence, no one dared to go in later. Situ Chitian had no choice but to rack his brains. Only then did he get people to develop those controllable biohumans. He planned to let them carry pinhole cameras and go in to explore the path first. Although this matter was extremely secretive, and the normal families and sects in the immortal cultivation world did not know much about it, it somehow spread to the ears of the immortal cultivation world and the ghost cultivation world. The leaders of the two sects reacted in unison. They laughed at Situ Chitian and were very dismissive of his method of entering the immortal cultivation world through the ancient ruin. There was no other reason. It was because they all knew that there was another easier way. That was, by sacrificing young women with spiritual qi, they could easily open the door to the immortal cultivation world. Hence, they would not send people to take risks in such an unknown place. In the immortal world, Songning City was still a peaceful scene. That night, Li Sienna returned to the place where she lived exhausted. Just as she opened the door, she felt that the usually empty house suddenly had something extra. Li Sienna looked over and saw a woman in black sitting on a chair. She was shocked, but when she saw who it was, her nervous expression immediately relaxed. "Master, why are you here?" Li Sienna closed the door and asked while boiling water, "Is there something urgent? Actually, you could have just given me a call. There was no need to come in person. I heard that it is also very troublesome for the immortal cultivation world to come to the immortal world." Li Sienna finished boiling the water and made a cup of tea for the woman in black. Then she stood in front of her respectfully. "Sienna, is there any progress on the matter that I asked you to do?" The woman in black picked up the cup and took a sip. Then she frowned slightly. It seemed that this cup of tea was not to her liking. "Master, please forgive me. I almost turned the entire Songning City upside down. I even went to Lan City a while ago, but I still did not find a suitable candidate." Li Sienna lowered her head and stammered. She looked a little embarrassed. The woman in black did not look surprised. She sighed softly and held the cup without saying anything. Chapter 1139. Li Sienna bit her lower lip and added, "But don't worry, master. As long as you give me a little more time, I will definitely help you find a suitable candidate." The woman in black raised the cup in her hand and was about to put it to her mouth when she heard Li Sienna's words. She paused for a moment and put the cup back on the table. She shook her head and said, "I heard that the Ghost Cultivation sect is also looking for a suitable candidate. If you can't find the person before they find the person, I'm afraid that not only our Five Elements sect, but also the entire Immortal Cultivation sect will be in trouble. What? Could it be that the other sects and families have also found nothing? Li Xianer was surprised and asked subconsciously. You can say that. Currently, only the Hong family has found someone who is barely qualified, but one person is definitely not enough. The woman in black nodded with a somewhat annoyed expression on her face. But Master, it's too difficult to find a suitable person. Is there no other way to enter the Immortal Cultivation world? Li Xianer complained gloomily. She had been running around looking for a suitable candidate for the past few months. She had worn out several pairs of shoes and spent an incalculable amount of money. In the end, she still couldn't complete the task. There were too few suitable people. The woman in black shook her head helplessly. She stared at Li Xianer's eyes and said, Actually, you also know that you were originally a good candidate. If it wasn't for the fact that your physique isn't very suitable for immortal cultivation, which greatly affects the progress of your cultivation, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble looking for you. Li Xianer was slightly shocked and dejectedly hung her head. In fact, she also wanted to make more contributions to the sect. However, the indisputable fact was that no matter how hard she cultivated, she couldn't make a breakthrough. Currently, she was still lingering around the qi refining stage. This matter was the biggest sticking point in Li Xianer's heart. I'm sorry, Xianer. Master was impatient and spoke harshly just now. Don't take it to heart. The woman in black could see that Li Xianer was a little sad after being exposed. She reached out her hand and touched Li Xianer's head and said apologetically, It's okay, Master. I don't mean to blame you. I just feel a little guilty. Li Xianer raised her head and forced a smile. After all, I also know that this is the most critical moment. If we let the Ghost Cultivation sect enter the Immortal Cultivation world and successfully find their ancestor, I'm afraid that not only the inner martial art world, but also the entire outer martial art world and the secular world will be in chaos. Li Xianer was usually careless and was no different from ordinary people. She was no different from the ordinary people in the secular world. She was always a careless person. But this was just a disguise. Li Xianer. She felt, or was like her mother. And Li Xianer. Sheet as she say. Xianer as she could. Even after knowing that her physique was not suitable for immortal cultivation, her master was only disappointed for a while. Then he searched for many precious heavenly treasures and insisted on giving them to her for a long period of time. With great difficulty, her physique changed a little, and she embarked on the path of immortal cultivation. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. The woman in black waved her hand, trying to ease the heavy atmosphere. It's okay if we can't find them. We'll use the most dangerous method to enter the immortal cultivation world. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. The woman in black waved her hand, trying to ease the heavy atmosphere. It's okay if we can't find them. We'll use the most dangerous method to enter the immortal cultivation world. In short, we can't let those people from the Ghost Cultivation sect succeed. And Master Li Xianer nodded. Just as she was about to say something, she was interrupted by the woman in black. Come. Let's not talk about other things. Speaking of which, I haven't eaten your cooking for a long time. Let me have a good taste of your cooking today and have a full meal. We'll talk about other things later. The woman in black took out some vegetables and meat from under the table as if she was performing a magic trick. She waved them in front of Li Xianer and said softly with a smile. Good. I haven't cooked for a long time. My skills might be rusty. Master, don't blame me if it's not delicious enough. Li Xianer cheered up and smiled. She reached out to take the ingredients and threw her negative emotions to the side. She happily ran into the kitchen and busied herself. Looking at Li Xianer's busy figure, the woman in black's face was brimming with a warm smile. She was just an ordinary woman. If it wasn't for the troublesome existence of the Ghost Cultivation sect, she also wanted to be with Li Xianer. The two of them would live in seclusion in the secular world and live a simple life as mortals. Unfortunately, things often don't go according to one's wishes. That night, after the woman in black had her dinner, she stayed at Li Xianer's house. She talked with her beloved disciple by candlelight until late at night. The next morning, the woman in black prepared to leave. Before she left, she hesitated for a long time. In the end, she told Li Xianer that after some time, the Hong family of the Immortal Cultivation sect would send someone over. It was a girl named Hong Zhu. She would help Li Xianer find a suitable candidate. After telling Li Xianer about this, the woman in black seemed to let out a sigh of relief. She gave Li Xianer a few more instructions before leaving. After sending off the woman in black, Li Sienna returned to her room and sat down. She stared blankly for a long time before sighing. In fact, Li Sienna was very resistant to some of the practices of the Immortal Cultivation sect. When the woman in black had given her the task, she had tried her best to complete it. Unfortunately, she hadn't found a suitable candidate in a short period of time. However, there was one time when her master had let slip and let Li Sienna know that the search for candidates for the sacrificial offering could actually be life-threatening. After knowing this, she had a feeling of disgust from the bottom of her heart. She was especially unwilling to help them find candidates. She was afraid that because of her, several innocent girls would lose their lives. Therefore, although she usually went out, she didn't deliberately look for candidates. Just like in the past, if it wasn't for the fact that someone from the Five Elements sect was secretly watching her, Li Sienna wouldn't have done things like catching ghosts for the rich second generation and real estate developers. This was simply lowering the level of her cultivation. Every time she finished doing these things, she felt disgusted by her own behavior. Li Sienna had also considered whether she should just lay her cards on the table to her master and tell her that she wasn't willing to do these immoral and life-threatening things. But every time the words came to her mouth, she would think of how her master had treated her well in the past. How she had stood up against the opinions of the masses and found countless precious treasures for her. She had gone through untold hardships to help her embark on the path of immortal cultivation. Chapter 1140. Every time she thought of that, Li Sienna would lose all her courage. She did not know what to say to her master. Li Sienna also understood that her master did not come to the secular world in person just to have a meal with her. The sect must have given her a lot of pressure. That was why she had gone to the Hong family to help her look for someone. Alas, it seemed that if she did not do something serious this time, not only would it be difficult for her to explain to her master, she might even be punished. She might as well go look for someone. At worst, after she found a suitable candidate, she would tell them the consequences and dangers of participating in the ritual and let them choose for themselves whether to participate or not. After thinking it through, Li Sienna stood up, packed up the things in the room, and decisively went out to carry out the mission. On one hand, she did not want to disappoint her master again, and on the other hand, she had nowhere to turn now. She could only brace herself and go on. Hong Zhu, who was carrying the mission of looking for someone, had just settled Song Huawu and the other girls down. He told them that he would be away for a few days because he had something to do. He would ask the Hong family's intelligence network to help him look for Xiao Chen. As for Jin Beibei, Song Huawu, and Xiao Xiao, because they were not familiar with the people and the place in the inner martial arts world, and because Song Huawu had not recovered from the shock of suddenly learning about her parentage, Hong Zhu reminded them to stay in the Hong family's house for the next 2 days and not to go out, in case they ran into any accidents and he could not come back in time to rescue them. After taking care of the matters here, Hong Zhu hurried back to his base camp, the Hong family of the outer martial arts world. She came back here to prepare to meet with an important person and tell her something very important. This matter concerned the future of the entire Immortal Cultivation sect. The decision of this person after hearing the news might affect the direction Hong Zhu would choose to take in the future. After returning to the Hong family, Hong Zhu did not bother to greet other people. He directly walked to a very remote room in the backyard. Hong Zhu, you haven't been here for a long time. I almost can't remember what you look like. Hearing the commotion outside the room, a woman in white slowly walked out of the room and said with a smile. As soon as the woman walked out, the sunlight in the courtyard seemed to brighten a little. Her beautiful face was not made up, but it was as fresh and refined as the morning clouds reflecting the snow. Her bright eyes looked as pure and innocent as a young deer, but they also revealed a hint of charm. She was clearly wearing a loose white robe, and when she moved, she was like a weak willow swaying in the wind, which made her figure even more exquisite and attractive. The leaves rustled and her hair fluttered in the wind, but it was not messy at all. Instead, it made her look lively and perfect. Jingxian, don't forget that I've also learned seduction techniques. Your shoddy martial arts clearly have no effect on me. You should properly cultivate for a period of time. Hong Zhu said in an indifferent manner. Although he said that, Hong Zhu's gaze subconsciously shifted to the side, not daring to look straight into Shen Jingshuan's eyes. He could feel his heart thumping wildly in his chest. Although Hong Zhu had no interest in women just now, he had truly felt his heart move. Shen Jingshuan's angelic face already had an extremely great lethality to men. If she could pair it with her natural charm and display this kind of secret seduction technique, it would be able to stimulate a man's most primal urges. Even Hong Zhu, who had cultivated seduction techniques, felt that he was a little unable to resist. Hong Zhu couldn't help but feel lucky that he had made preparations in advance and arranged for Xin Jingxian to live alone in the most secluded room in the Hong residence. She was strictly forbidden from going out, and no other family members were allowed to set foot in that room. Daily chores such as meals were handed over to his personal maidservants to assist her, depriving her of any chance to meet with anyone else. Otherwise, with Xin Jingxuan's astonishing cultivation speed, coupled with her own superior conditions, let alone taking her out to defeat an enemy, even within the family, a storm of blood might be stirred up because of her. Just as he rejoiced, Hong Zhu suddenly thought of the topic he was about to discuss with Xin Jingxian and suddenly felt a little unnatural. After all, this matter was related to the safety of the entire immortal cultivation sect, and it was also closely related to Xin Jingxuan's future. Unfortunately, he had never told her about it before, so Hong Zhu really didn't know how to bring it up. Is there really no effect? Why do I feel like there's something wrong with you? Xin Jingxian smiled faintly as she teased him. No. Hong Zhu's mind was in a whirl and he was momentarily unable to appreciate Xin Jingxuan's beauty as he absent-mindedly replied. Seeing that Hong Zhu's expression was somewhat solemn, Xin Jingxian also put away her playful thoughts and asked, Hong Zhu, did you come here for some other important matter other than to visit me? Yes. Hong Zhu hesitated for a moment, but in the end he didn't deny it. He nodded and said, You guessed right, I do indeed have something important to discuss with you. You'd better be mentally prepared. Hong Zhu glanced at Xin Jingxian with an ashamed expression and thought for a long time, but he still didn't know where to start. In fact, Hong Zhu knew from a young age that she and Hong Yan were born as rare women with spiritual energy in their bodies. They shouldered the heavy responsibility of completing the family's mission. Moreover, this important mission could also be life-threatening. It was precisely because of this that the Hong family rarely interfered with their daily lives, allowing them to do whatever they liked. Hong Yan studied in a pharmacy in the secular world, while Hong Zhu followed her grandfather to manage the business. These were all their own interests. Hong Yan was a well-behaved child, obedient and sensible. Although she didn't know the specifics of this important mission and only knew that she had to contribute to the family's path to a higher world, she never expressed any complaints and was instead very cooperative with the family. However, Hong Zhu was different. Her personality was the complete opposite of Hong Yan's. She was a little demoness who feared neither the heavens nor the earth. She acted boldly and willfully, so she was naturally unwilling to accept such a dangerous mission for no apparent reason. Since there was no way to go against the family, Hong Zhu simply came up with an idea and decided to find someone with a similar constitution to her to complete the mission in her place. Previously, when he had gone to the secular world, he had coincidentally met Xin Jingxian, so Hong Zhu had set his sights on her. Hong Zhu discovered that not only did Xin Jingxuan's body contain spiritual energy, she was also born with an innately bewitching physique, which was extremely suitable for cultivating his cultivation technique. Thus, he had brought her back to the martial world with the intention of increasing Xin Jingxuan's strength so that she could complete the family's mission. If his relationship with Xin Jingxian was only limited to this, Hong Zhu wouldn't have been in such a difficult situation today. Chapter 1141. Based on her little she-devil personality, tricking an ordinary person to complete a task for her was a simple matter, and she would not feel any guilt in her heart. But later, as the relationship between Hong Zhu and Xiao Qin grew closer, she gradually learned that this boy had already developed true feelings for Xin Jingxian, and that he was not just playing around. That was why she had told Hong Zhu to take good care of Xin Jingxian and not let her get hurt. This time Hong Zhu was in a dilemma. She did not want to hurt Xiao Qin, so she could not bear to let Xin Jingxian die in her place. But if she did not let Xin Jingxian go, then who would complete the task? Could it be that after going around in circles she still had to do it herself? Today Hong Zhu had come to lay her cards on the table with Xin Jingxian. The ghost cultivation sect had already begun to move, and it was obvious that they were preparing for that matter. Therefore, the immortal cultivation sect's need for women with spiritual energy was growing more and more urgent. If this matter was not properly carried out, it was bound to be a mess. Hong Zhu planned to tell Xin Jingxian everything she knew and let her make her own choice. If she finally chose to accept the task, it could not be considered as him forcing her to do so. If she decided to give up, then he would not stop her. Hongzhu's expression changed from time to time, sometimes worried and sometimes depressed. Seeing this, Shen Jingxian also became a little nervous. She quickly walked in front of Hongzhu and asked in a low voice, "Is Xiaoqin in danger? Last time, I heard you say that Xiaoqin was chased by the sect leader of the Kuei Mountain sect, and then there was no news of him. Is there any news of him now?" Ever since she learned that Xiaoqin had offended someone from the outer martial arts world, Shen Jingxian had been so worried that she could not eat or drink for several days. She had also lost a lot of weight. She even had the idea of returning to the secular world to rescue Xiaoqin. Later, after Hongzhu's repeated persuasion, she gave up on this idea. Through Hongzhu's analysis as well as after she had calmed down and thought things over, Shen Jingxian also understood that with her current meager cultivation, it was simply impossible for her to fight against the sect master of an outer martial arts sect. Even if she managed to find Xiaoqin, she would only be a burden. Although she was unwilling, Shen Jingxian could only temporarily suppress the impulse in her heart and devote herself to cultivation. She strived to learn as soon as possible so that she could help Xiaoqin. Although she didn't mention it, Shen Jingxian was still worried about Xiaoqin. She usually lived alone in a corner and did not know much about the outside world, so when she saw the conflicted look on Hongzhu's face, she naturally thought of Xiaoqin. Hongzhu was slightly taken aback, his expression a little unnatural. If he had really substituted himself for her and deliberately sent her to her death, Xiaoqin would definitely hate him, wouldn't he? Seeing that Hongzhu was not saying anything, Shen Jingxian could not help but grab her wrist and ask anxiously, "Hongzhu, tell me quickly, did Xiaoqin get into trouble again?" "Don't be anxious." Hongzhu came back to his senses and patted the back of Shen Jingxian's hand to comfort her. According to the current information, Xiaoqin's life should not be in danger for the time being. However, according to speculation, he might have been captured by the inner martial arts world. Although Hongzhu was actually not confident about Xiaoqin's safety, seeing how agitated Shen Jingxian was, she could only advise her with kind words and calm her down first. The inner martial arts world? Shen Jingxian was stunned and asked doubtfully, didn't he offend the Kuei Mountain sect of the outer martial arts world before? Why is he going against the inner martial arts world again? Could it be that the Kuei Mountain sect found help? The Kuei Mountain sect's leader is dead, so this threat has been removed. Hongzhu shook his head and said, there seems to be a mysterious force in the inner martial arts world that is capturing cultivators on a large scale. I suspect that Xiaoqin's disappearance has something to do with this mysterious force. Then what should we do? Xiaoqin might still be in danger. Shen Jingxian frowned slightly. She looked so pitiful that people could not help but want to go up and pamper her. We are also looking for his whereabouts now. Hongzhu suddenly thought of something and said, by the way, a few days ago Xiao Xiao, Jin Beibei and Song Huawu came to the Outer Martial Arts World Guild to ask for help. I happened to run into them. Do you know them? They are now in the Hong family of the Inner Martial Arts World to help investigate the missing cultivators and to find Xiaoqin's whereabouts. What? Beibei and Xiao Xiao also went to the Inner Martial Arts World. Shen Jingxian was shocked. Why didn't you stop them? They actually brought them into the Inner Martial Arts World. This is wrong. If they were in danger, how could we explain it to Xiaoqin? Shen Jingxian, who was gentle and demure, was also stomping her feet anxiously. She did not have much impression of Song Huawu. After all, she had only met her once. However, Jin Beibei and Xiao Xiao were different. Of the two of them, one was Qing Menjing's cousin, and the other was Xiaoqin's younger sister. Usually they held them in their hands, afraid that they would fall, and held them in their mouths, afraid that they would melt. If something happened to these two young ladies, wouldn't Xiaoqin and Qing Menjing's hearts ache to death? Jingxian, don't worry too much. They are both staying in the Hong family and never leaving. I've also sent out the Hong Shadow Guardians to protect them. After comforting Shen Jingxian, Hongzhu lowered his head and hesitated for a moment. Then he said solemnly, in fact, I came to you today for another important matter. What is it? Shen Jingxian's head was filled with the safety of Xiaoqin and Jin Beibei. Her heart was burning with anxiety. She did not notice Hongzhu's face and simply asked casually, Jingxian, do you still remember the world of immortal cultivators that I mentioned to you before? Hongzhu hesitated for a moment and summoned his courage to say, right now, there is a way to enter the world of immortal cultivators. It is a great opportunity for you. Wait a moment. Before Hongzhu finished, Shen Jingxian frowned and did not want to listen to him anymore. What does it have to do with me whether or not I can enter the world of immortal cultivators? Shouldn't the most important thing right now be to find Xiao Chen and then bring him out of the inner martial arts world safely together with Jin Beibei and the rest of them? Shen Jingxian was usually very strict with her upbringing, and she was a kind person who would never rashly interrupt others when they were talking. If it were not for the fact that she was really in a hurry and Hong Zhu had suddenly brought up a completely unrelated matter, she would not have so rashly objected. Let me finish first. Naturally, Hong Zhu understood Shen Jingshuan's anxiety. Therefore he did not feel offended. Instead, he waved his hands and explained patiently, with our current abilities and information channels, it is very difficult to find out Xiao Chen's whereabouts, let alone rescue him. Do you agree with that? Shen Jingxian nodded helplessly. She secretly hated herself for not being strong enough. Otherwise, she would not have been trapped here and could only wait for Hong Zhu to bring her bad news. Chapter 1142. But right now we have a chance, or to be more precise, you have a chance. Hong Zhu said solemnly, as long as you're willing to help open the secret passage to the cultivation world, you'll have a chance to raise your strength to a higher realm before that happens. You might even become a venerable expert. I believe you understand what it means to become a venerable expert, right? Of course I understand. Once I become a martial honor, I will have a greater chance of finding Xiao Chen. Shen Jingxian nodded. After pondering for a moment, she asked doubtfully, but there are still some things I'm not very clear about. Firstly, why am I the only one who can open the secret passage? Actually, I don't know much about the cultivation world. I only know that my clan has always emphasized that only young women with spiritual energy can successfully open the door to the cultivation world. Hong Zhu paused for a moment, then added, but because no one has ever tried this method before, there may be risks involved. Of course, there is also a chance that nothing will happen. No one knows for sure. So that's how it is. Then what do you mean by becoming a martial venerable? Shen Jingxian frowned slightly and asked again, and from what you've said, it doesn't seem like there's a 100% chance of success. If you agree to open the passage, I will send you to a secret realm in the inner martial arts world in advance. Hong Zhu continued to explain, this secret realm is called the Martial Honor Secret Realm and it only opens once every few years. Not long from now it will be the day it opens. You can quickly cultivate in this secret realm and attempt to break through to the martial honor realm. Of course, there may also be risks during this period, so I want you to make this decision yourself. After saying that, Hong Zhu sighed softly. Since he had already chosen not to hide anything, he might as well tell Shen Jingxian everything he knew and let her make the decision. In Hong Zhu's view, opportunity and risk always coexisted. If Shen Jingxian was willing to participate, he could send her to the Venerate secret realm to cultivate. If she did not agree, he would have no choice but to find another suitable candidate. If he really could not find anyone, then Hong Zhu would have to go himself. So that's how it is. If I can break through to the martial venerable realm, I might be able to find Xiao Chen and save him from his enemies. Shen Jingxian murmured. She had mixed feelings in her heart. Recalling everything that Xiao Chen had done for her and the Shen family in the past, Shen Jingxian could not help but feel a knot in her stomach. Her emotions surged as she stood in the courtyard in a daze. Her white dress fluttered even though there was no wind, outlining her beautiful figure. She was indeed very eager to increase her strength and go to the inner martial arts world to rescue Xiao Chen. However, she was also very clear that it was just as Hong Zhu had said. If she wanted to quickly increase her strength, she would definitely have to pay a huge price. Since that was the case, she had to think it through in advance. Shen Jingxian felt that she was the only person who had a chance to help Xiao Chen at present. If she were to throw her life away because of this matter, then all her previous efforts would have been for naught. Seeing that Shen Jingxian had sunk into deep thought, Hong Zhu did not rush her. Instead, he stood quietly to the side and waited. After all, this matter concerned Shen Jingshuan's own safety. She would definitely need some time to consider it. Hong Zhu did not think that he would be able to obtain an answer immediately, so he had already made preparations. It would not matter even if he had to wait for a few days. Shen Jingxian suddenly took a deep breath. She understood very well what the risk that Hong Zhu had mentioned earlier meant. However, to her, Xiao Chen was an existence that surpassed friendship, love and family. If she chose not to take this risk because she was afraid of failure, she would not be able to forgive herself. All right. I promise you. Then let's go now. Shen Jingxian collected her thoughts and agreed without hesitation. If she were to put herself in his shoes, Shen Jingxian felt that if Xiao Chen was in her shoes, he would definitely agree without any hesitation. So after thinking it through, she no longer hesitated. Ah, you've really thought it through? Hongzhu was slightly taken aback and subconsciously asked. She had originally thought that Xin Jingxian would need some time to consider it. She had not expected her to agree so quickly, so she could not react for a moment. As long as there's a glimmer of hope, I must give it my all. I don't want to leave any regrets in my life. Xin Jingxian nodded, her voice gentle but firm. If Xiao Qin had not helped her so much in the past, she would not have the achievements she had today. Now that she had this opportunity, she naturally had to repay him. Even if her life was in danger, she still had to press forward. All right. In that case, you should go and pack up now. I'll first escort you to the Hong family of the inner martial arts world. After that, I'll listen to Grandpa Patriarch's arrangements. Hongzhu nodded as he understood Xin Jingshuan's determination. All right, then wait for me. When the time comes, I'll have to rely on you to stay with the Hong family. Xin Jingxian smiled sweetly, turned around and walked towards her room. Stunned by Xin Jingshuan's smile, Hongzhu only regained his senses after a long time. Looking at her graceful back as she walked away, Hongzhu secretly said in his heart, Jingxian, thank you. I admit that I'm a coward, I don't have the courage to shoulder the heavy responsibility of the family, and I even wanted to push this responsibility onto you. Thank you for agreeing to me. I'll pray day and night that you and the others can safely complete the mission and successfully rescue Xiao Chen. Early the next morning, Hongzhu secretly sent Xin Jingxian to the Hong family of the inner martial world. She did not report it to Grandfather Patriarch immediately. Instead, she let her reunite with Jin Beibei and the other women. She also specifically told Hong Yingwei to let them stay alone for a few days and report it to the family patriarch later. Jin Beibei and the others were naturally very happy to see Xin Jingxian. After arranging everything properly, Hongzhu left silently again and went to the secular world to meet Li Xiener, preparing to continue looking for new women with spiritual qi. While everyone was worried about Xiao Qin, he had already successfully returned to the Jia family with Xing Qing Menjing, and the other women were finally relieved. On one hand, it was because Xiao Qin had returned safe and sound. On the other hand, it was because they had kept it a secret from Jia Muzhen for a few days. As a result, even Jia Muzhen was a little suspicious. If Xiao Qin had not returned, they would not have known what excuse they could find to continue deceiving him. Now that he had returned safe and sound, Xiao Qin did not hide it anymore. He told Jia Muzhen everything. Xiao Qin, you are really something. You actually went to Open Heaven Gate to rescue people alone. How can you be so bold? After learning that Xiao Qin had gone to Open Heaven Gate, Jia Muzhen also broke out in a cold sweat. He said with some dissatisfaction, why didn't you tell me in advance? I could have sent some people to help you. If something had happened to you, wouldn't I have been scolded by my grandfather? Chapter 1143. Oh, I was afraid that you wouldn't be at ease, so I didn't let Menjing and the others tell the truth. Xiao Qin shrugged and explained with a cheeky smile, besides, your guards aren't as strong as me. It's more convenient for me to move alone. You. Jia Muzhen glared and was about to get angry when Xiao Qin waved his hand and said with a smile, all right, don't be angry. Awaken Gate isn't a scary place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. That Sidu Qiqian wanted to make me stay, but didn't he let me leave smoothly? I even stabbed him with my flying sword. Although he felt that it was a little tricky at that time, Xiao Qin thought about it in hindsight and felt that Awaken Gate was nothing more than that. Even the sect leader, Sidu Qiqian, wasn't that powerful. However, what Xiao Qin didn't know was that Sidu Qiqian didn't want to kill him because he was afraid of harming the innocent. That was why he chose not to make a move. Otherwise, he might not be able to return safely with that Xing chick. It can't be, right? Is that true? Jia Muzhen was stunned when he heard that. He had a look of surprise on his face. Not only did you encounter Sidu Qiqian, but you also injured him? Yes. Actually, it's nothing much. I thought I could directly kill him with my flying sword. Xiao Qin curled his lips and shook his head regretfully. Unfortunately, I only stabbed him between the eyebrows and bled a little. What a big loss. I didn't expect it, really didn't expect it. I heard that his strength has improved greatly in recent years, and he's almost unrivaled in the inner martial arts world. There are even very few people who can last more than 3 moves in his hands. Jia Muzhen looked at Xiao Qin as if he was looking at a monster and asked in amazement, I didn't expect him to actually suffer a big loss in your hands. It's simply incredible. How did you do it? Although he always felt that Xiao Chen's strength was unfathomable, he didn't expect it to be so heaven-defying. That was the leader of the inner martial arts world's demonic sects, the sect leader of Awakened Gate. Oh, it was like this at the time. Xiao Chen spread his hands and described the process of going to Open Heaven Gate. This. After listening to Xiao Chen's experience, Jia Muzhen was speechless. This guy wanted to kill a venerable expert, and it felt like it was as easy as eating and drinking. Jia Muzhen could not help but secretly rejoice. Fortunately, Xiao Chen was on his side. Otherwise, not to mention the three big families, even the entire martial arts world would not be enough for him. Alright, the story is over. Do you have anything else to say? If there's nothing else, I'm going to rest. It's quite tiring to fly all the way back. Xiao Chen stood up and stretched lazily. He felt that the long and arduous journey on his flying sword was even more tiring than fighting Sidu Qitian. Yes, I really have something to talk to you about. Jia Muzhen seemed to have woken up from a dream. Only now did he remember that he had something serious to talk to him about. What is it? Xiao Chen yawned. Little Miss Xing had already gone to rest with Tian Suruan. He also wanted to lie down and sleep immediately. Looking at the sky outside, Jia Muzhen said, "There's still some time. Go take a bath and rest for a while. Tonight, the Jia family will be hosting a banquet. The important figures of the other two big families will be attending. Grandfather told me that I must invite you because you are now our Jia family's distinguished guest. You must attend." What banquet? Even the people of the other two big families are coming. It seems to be quite grand. Are they here to discuss the venerable mystic realm? Xiao Chen asked subconsciously. To be able to gather all the people of the three big families at the same time, only the matter of the venerable mystic realm would have such great charm. Didn't that Sidu Qitian also not make a big fuss about it because of this matter? That's right. It's an exchange banquet for the venerable mystic realm that is about to open. Jia Muzhen nodded his head with a somewhat disdainful expression. The other two big families want to take this opportunity to build a good relationship with our Jia family. When the time comes, some people from the inner martial arts world will also come. Actually, they just want to curry favor with the Jia family. They want to get more spiritual jades back so that when the mystic realm opens, they can exchange for a few more spots. Jia Muzhen felt very helpless. Although he didn't like this kind of social interaction from the bottom of his heart, as the successor of the Jia family, he had to attend this kind of occasion. I think they are not here to curry favor with the Jia family. They are mainly here to curry favor with you. Because after a period of time, you will become the official patriarch of the Jia clan. It is normal for those people to rack their brains to curry favor with you. Xiao Chen laughed and patted Jia Muzhen's shoulder as he teased him. Xiao Chen also didn't like this kind of occasion. However, since Jia Muzhen had spoken, he naturally couldn't not go. Who cares about them? By the way, the banquet starts at 7 o'clock. At that time, someone will come to take you there. I should also go prepare. I don't know many people who will come this time, so I have to look at their photos first to avoid making a fool of myself. Jia Muzhen smiled bitterly and said goodbye to Xiao Chen. He turned around and walked to Jia Jingyan's study room. Xiao Chen shook his head and sighed. He could understand Jia Muzhen's difficulties very well. All big families were basically like this. Although he was a good-for-nothing in the Xiao family, he also had a lot of social interaction. He also had to pretend to be a playboy all the time. Although he was very resistant in his heart, he could only pretend on the surface. Otherwise, it was still a question whether he could live until now. Xiao Chen casually cleaned up and didn't bother to sleep. In the blink of an eye, it was almost 7 o'clock. He was not in a hurry to attend the banquet. Instead, he first took the control token to Tang Tang's place. He asked Cheng Minjing and the other girls to help her change into suitable clothes. Then he took them to the banquet together. When Xiao Chen and the others arrived at the banquet hall, it was already 7:30. People from other families and sects had already arrived. However, those people didn't seem to care much about Xiao Chen who came late. They casually glanced at him and then turned their eyes away. They basically surrounded Jia Muzhen with a warm smile on their faces. They were bustling in line waiting to talk to the future Jia family head. Anyway, flattery didn't cost money. These people simply bombarded Jia Muzhen with a lot of words. From the extraordinary destiny to the secret love of a little girl, they pulled out all kinds of words from Jia Muzhen. Jia Muzhen basically could only stare and smirk, completely unable to answer. On the other hand, no one paid attention to Xiao Chen. He was very leisurely. He took a few girls to pick something to eat, drank some red wine infused with vitality, admired the food and chatted about all kinds of things. Xiaoqun liked this kind of leisurely feeling very much. He didn't have to be tired like Jianghu, who forced a smile, and didn't have to think about how to participate in the struggle of the big families and sections. It was enough to just chat happily, eat and drink. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.